Welcome, everybody, to Adapt or Perish, episode 54, as we celebrate Halloween with a look at the horror classic Dracula. Before we get started, we've got some news. Some of you who follow us online and in Instagram and stuff may have found out that we had the baby. Yes, that's right. Ariel and I went to the hospital and we made a tiny person, and the hospital thought that we were responsible enough to take the tiny person home and care for him and make sure that he is okay, which is foolish on their part. We are stumbling through this entire thing, and sleep has been just a luxury that I dare not even dream about. No, for real, we're super happy. He is adorable and wonderful. His name is Calvin. And he's the best, and we love him and laugh at him every single day because he's very, very silly, tiny little baby. I bring this up for two reasons. One, this is huge, and we're really excited about it, and so many people have reached out to express their best wishes for us, and we just want you to know he's wonderful, and this whole thing is so exciting. Two, it's going to affect our next few episodes. So obviously this is taking a lot of our energy right now. And while the show is incredibly important to us, it kind of had to fall down in the priorities a little bit, which we think everyone understands. So our plan is that it's not going to interrupt the flow of episodes, but we are going to have to do something that we haven't done before, which is we're actually going to do a couple of reruns. So after today's episode, so today we're looking at Dracula, in 2 weeks we're going to be starting our first of two reruns, and then hopefully we'll be back on a regular schedule with new episodes, but we need some time to kind of build our back catalog up a little bit, which, again, I'm sure everybody understands. So I just want to let you know that in our next episode, we're going to be looking back at our look at Roald Dahl's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. This was an episode that I picked for the reruns. I really enjoy this episode. I think it's a really good example of what we do with this show and the way we compare different adaptations. The other thing I love about it is that, and this is kind of a peek behind the curtains, this was the very first time that we ever recorded an entire episode and then later kind of talked to each other and independently thought, we think we could do better. And so we actually fully re-recorded the entire episode, and that is what we originally kind of aired, and that's what you're going to be hearing in 2 weeks, which is our look at Roald Dahl's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and then in that episode, we'll let you know what rerun Ariel has picked. So if you have any comments, questions, or corrections about today's episode that you'd like to hear on the show, remember to email adaptorperishcast@gmail.com or tweet at us using the AdaptCast hashtag. If you enjoy the show, we'd love it if you would share that with the world by leaving a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find the show notes from this and all other episodes at adaptorperishcast.com. And with that, on with the show, Adapt or Perish, episode 54, Dracula. Hello and welcome to Adapt or Perish, a podcast about adaptation with an especially big focus on Perish this episode. I'm Jeremy Latour.
And I'm Ariel Lipshaw.
Happy Halloween, everybody.
Happy Halloween!
I was trying to think, what's a creepy version of our title? Die is in the title of our show.
Adapt or die.
All right, so this is our second annual Halloween episode.
Woo.
And last year, we talked about the classic monster story of Frankenstein.
Yes, we
and
did.
Frankenstein's monster. And we thought, let's keep this monster mash going.
Yeah.
And let's talk about the other guy, the guy with the bitey guy.
But the stabby teeth man.
The stabby teeth rapey man.
Dracula.
Yes, the vampire.
Vlad the Impaler.
So we are covering Bram Stoker's Dracula, and we're doing this in a very exciting way, I think, which is that we're going to talk about a million different versions of this story. So many different ones.
Okay, so we watched 11 different Draculas.
Like 10 and a bonus one.
10 and a bonus.
That bonus one's going to pop up midway through the episode.
Yeah, and so as we tried to determine, because a lot of times we just talk about things in chronological order. Oh, and we did read the entire book, Dracula.
Yes.
Which is quite a long book.
Mm-hmm.
Last year we did Frankenstein, which was not nearly as onerous a read, because that book is snappy. Dracula's not snappy.
No.
I wouldn't say. So we watched a lot of Draculas, Count's Dracula, and we were trying to come up with a fun way of ordering them all, since we thought we could just go chronologically. Or we could go just in order of like how much we liked them. We've done both of those before.
That's true.
But we decided, in honor of Halloween, the spookiest time of year, to talk about these in order of scariness from least to most scary.
Yes.
So if it seems like we're jumping around in chronological time and in how much we liked them quite a bit, that's why, because this is the order of spookiness.
And one thing I want to say really quickly that I think is important, as a little disclaimer, this is like, we have our own scare buttons.
Yeah.
Everybody scares a little differently.
Yeah.
And so this was scary to us.
Yeah. And when we get
your
into,
mileage may vary, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, when we get into the ones that we found scary, we'll talk about why we found them scary, and the ones that weren't scary, we'll talk about why we didn't find them scary.
You're saying we didn't find all of them scary?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing too was like many of these we watched in like mid-afternoon in like early September. So
the devil's hour, they call it.
So it wasn't exactly
mid-afternoon of a Sunday.
It wasn't like exactly prime like spooky movie viewing season. So it may be that we found things not scary that had we watched them like in sort of the right frame of how you're kind of supposed to watch scary movies, we would have found them scarier.
Probably.
Is that fair to say?
I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
Do you want to get started?
Yeah, let's do this.
Hey, we got to talk about this book.
Yeah.
So this book, the book, Dracula. The book written by Bram Stoker in 1897. I want to say one thing about Bram Stoker that I didn't know for like years.
Okay.
Decades, some would say. Like, where's Bram Stoker from? Where do you think young me assumed Bram Stoker was from?
I mean, he's Irish. Where do you think he was just like
I thought he was
English?
I thought he was from the continent. I thought he was like Eastern European or
really?
something. Like, yeah.
Oh.
For whatever reason, it just was one of those things that I never really paid attention to.
Oh, that would never have occurred to me.
Didn't know he's just an Irish boy.
Yeah, he's a good Irish boy.
Yeah.
You thought like Bram Stoker was kind of like an Eastern European name and not just like Abraham Stoker.
I just think
from county wherever. I don't know why I did that in a Texas accent.
Well, that's going to come up more. No, I just feel like, here's the deal. I think Big Dracula has done a really good job of like putting...
There is for sure Big Dracula.
Yeah, they've done a really good job of kind of ingratiating this concept into the popular consciousness.
Yeah.
And I just didn't think about it.
Yeah, that's fair.
He was an Irish boy.
Yeah.
Some things about the book that, because I don't think we can make the assumption that everyone has read this book.
Oh, no. I mean, I thought I had read this book. I was pretty sure I had read this book. And as I got about 3/4 of the way through, I was like, I don't know that I've ever finished this book. Or maybe I skipped parts because this book is long and there's a lot of stuff in it that I did not remember.
Yeah, I think I had read it at one point, but this was certainly like a fresh reading.
Yeah.
I did not remember quite a lot of this.
For sure.
But I just want to get this out of the way. Super, super fun book.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Really fun except when it's not.
Well, yeah, like talk about that. Like what was sort of what would you say your main emotional reaction to this book was?
Here's like a couple of things in no particular order.
Yeah.
One, just from a story structure perspective, the thing that was fascinating reading this and then going through and watching a whole bunch of movies and TV shows was that it is so clear when you're reading it what like a future writer is going to cut to cut it down.
Right.
Because like so many things happen multiple times. Like Dracula kills Lucy Westenra. This is a thing that is in the book. Also, not only spoiler alerts for Dracula, but we're going to spoil every single movie that we watched.
Yeah.
To be clear.
Sorry.
So Dracula kills Lucy. He visits her one night, drinks some of her blood, and then Van Helsing and her friends give her a blood transfusion the next day.
4 blood transfusions.
Then the next night he drinks some of her blood and then another transfusion. And then he drinks some of her blood and then another transfusion. And I think it's like literally 4 days worth.
Yeah, it's 4 transfusions from 4 different people.
And then she dies.
And
I can understand any writer who is adapting this for a different medium saying, I mean, we'll do one. I think in mine we're going to do one. There's like a whole cast of characters in this. There are 3 different men who want the affection of Lucy.
Yes.
It is very easy to see why people would cut that down to one character.
Or at least like not make it an important plot point that all of them are just like sort of there because they proposed to Lucy and got rejected, because that happens like in the first 5 pages of the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other one I can think of is The other thing I didn't know is that like the whole middle of the book is a crime procedural where Van Helsing and his crew are doing, research. They're doing the Law and Order thing. It's like the beginning of the episode where we've got like Jerry Orbach and whoever his, partner of the day is going out and interviewing a ton of people.
R.I.P. Law and Order's never been the same.
I know, but it's before we get to Sam Waterston.
Yeah.
It's the Jerry Orbach stuff.
Right.
That's like the middle of this entire book is they're playing a game, which is how many boxes of dirt did Dracula bring to London? We're going to catch them all.
We're gonna find a guy moving boxes and show him a picture, and he's gonna say, I saw that guy, and then we're gonna go to the bar, and the guy's gonna be wiping down the bar, and we're gonna show him a picture, and he's gonna be like, I saw that guy.
Yeah, basically.
There's basically a formula for how this works.
And they visit so many different places to track down so many different boxes, and I can see someone just saying, hey, you know what? I think I'll have them go to his house, find a bunch of boxes, and then we can be done with it.
Yeah.
So that was one thing about the book that struck me.
Yeah. I want to say something about the structure of the book, which is very interesting because this is, I think technically it's an epistolary novel.
Technically, yes.
But that's technically letters. But this is made up of all kinds of different forms of media. We have letters, we have diaries, we have transcriptions of like
dictaphones.
Messages. Yeah, like Seward takes all of his notes. He dictates all of his notes, and then someone transcribes them. We have things that we know are like shorthand communications, telegrams, all kinds of different things, which is really interesting. And it is interesting too because you and I read the book in kind of different ways. I sat down and read the book, but you listened to the audiobook, which you said was very good. And I asked you like, oh, did they do like different voices? Because like all of these different little bits, of course, is like in first person. And you were like, no, it was just one very talented narrator doing all of the different accents and voices.
I mean, he was pretty talented.
Yeah, except for one character.
There is one. Let's talk about Quincy Morris.
Okay.
Well, okay. But in fact, let me talk about a different thing first. One thing that I didn't expect was how many characters there are.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of them. Like, this is an ensemble. It's not just like there's a guy, there's a girl, there's a vampire.
Oh, no, there is a vampire killing squad.
Yeah. There's a monster squad.
Monster squad.
And like one of them is Quincy P. Morris.
Yes.
Who is from Texas.
Yes.
And I think in this audiobook and every version that we watched that included Quincy Morris, one had someone who could conceivably do a Texas accent.
Yeah.
One.
Yeah, they were not careful about this.
We'll get to who that was in a little bit. I love the fact that you bring up the epistolary nature of the novel, too, which is the most pretentious sentence that I've said all day.
That was very scholarly.
Thank you very much. The thing that I found so fascinating about this is we've read epistolary books before, but I feel like this was a really entertaining version of that where, yes, it's epistolary, but the fact that it's all journals and letters is part of the plot.
Yeah, that's totally true.
Like, Stoker uses that in the plot where you constantly have, like, Mina and Jonathan, who we'll talk about. They're going through and they're collecting everybody's journals and everybody's letters, creating this one piece of evidence that anyone can look at to say, yes, Dracula was a vampire and this monster squad was trying to kill him. And that's like part of the book.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, correct me if I'm wrong. We talked a little bit before this about how we watch so many versions that we can't really speak in absolutes, like, none of the versions did this or all of the versions did this because we're likely to be wrong because we've watched so many. But I'm not sure any of the versions showed that aspect of it, of them like collecting all of these papers and letters and diaries and like putting them together into one master document that showed the entire sequence of events, which is kind of like it's very meta in terms of the structure of the book because it's saying like that letter that you read before, Mina found that letter and she put it in chronological order so we can try to like come up with an order of how all of this stuff went down. And I don't really remember, there may have been a version that did that a little bit, but I don't really remember it being certainly not like a major plot point in any of the versions that we watched.
I can't remember a single one that did that.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Like there were very few that even did anything about like showing the characters like writing letters or writing diaries or anything like that. Like
no,
most of them didn't use that. Most of them didn't use that literary technique as part of what they were showing on screen, which is fine. Like maybe it just doesn't work for screen. Like maybe it works much better in printed text. But that is interesting because it's such an important part of the book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, a couple of them definitely do the like classic cinema. We're going to have one of the character dictating like in narration one of the letters they're writing home.
Yeah.
But then they kind of give up on that.
Yeah.
Like it's in it a little bit.
A little bit.
There's one other thing before we get to the plot. There is one other thing that I wanted to talk about that kind of was refreshing going back through and reading it.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing about Dracula. Dracula in the book, let me ask you, did you think he was ever presented as being sexy or appealing?
No, in no way.
Never once.
Literally not one time.
Like Dracula in the book is absolutely a villain. He's a horrible, at times disgusting villain. He's strong and terrifying, but he's not this like sexy Dracula. So I feel like anytime we ever see a version that has a Dracula that is somehow sexually appealing, I just got like, it wasn't in the book.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot to say as we go about sort of like the psychosexual nature of what all of these different male directors got out of the book and story Dracula, because some of them found stuff in it that is not there.
Well, I have something to read about finding things in it that may not be there.
Yeah, okay.
This is a paragraph from Wikipedia compiling all of the different things people have said about this book. Now, the thing that I love is I can't say that all of these opinions are wrong.
Okay.
I can't.
No.
What I can say is they can't all be right.
Okay.
So here we go. In the last several decades, literary and cultural scholars have offered diverse analyses of Stoker's novel and the character of Count Dracula. C.F. Bentley reads Dracula as an embodiment of the Freudian id. Carol A. Senf reads the novel as a response to the new woman archetype, while Christopher Kraft sees Dracula as embodying latent homosexuality and sees the text as an example of a, quote, characteristic, if hyperbolic, instance of Victorian anxiety over the potential fluidity of gender roles. Stephen D. Arata interprets the events of the novel as anxiety over colonialism and racial mixing.
Okay.
And Talia Schaefer construes the novel as an indictment of Oscar Wilde. Franco Moretti reads Dracula as a figure of monopoly capitalism, though Hollis Robbins suggests that Dracula's inability to participate in social conventions and to forge business partnerships undermines his power. Richard Knoll reads Dracula within the context of 19th century alienism and asylum medicine. D. Bruno Stars understands the novel to be a pro-Catholic pamphlet promoting proselytization.
This is all amazing.
Like, holy shit. I think I only read this to say we're going to take a pretty literal approach to this.
Yeah, it's just a story about a vampire.
Like, it's a really fun story about a vampire.
I mean, I do have some stuff to say about the women characters and the sexiness of it all, but I wouldn't say that any of those theories that you just espoused are anything that I got out of reading it, although I will say that the new woman thing, so the edition that I read, I'm just going to say really quick. We got like on deep clearance at some bookstore that we were in. It was like $4. And I thought it was an annotated edition.
It is an annotated edition.
Well, I thought it was an annotated edition like those that I am used to, which are really nice. And I have a bunch of them. And they're basically just editions of the book with notes by some scholar about either like things that were happening historically at the time, things that were happening in the writer's life, or like just notes on things that might get mentioned in the book that maybe you don't know what they are because we don't have those anymore or whatever.
So that's what you expected.
That would be what I expect an annotated edition to be. But this was the annotated writer's edition. So it was someone who clearly fancies himself very smart at writing, annotating all of the things that Stoker does that are examples of good writing. And it was very weird and not interesting, and it basically consisted of him like just every so often like popping in to say like, look, this is an example of suspense. It's like, yeah, yeah, he's good at that. But he was very into this new woman concept, and literally anytime Mina was mentioned, he liked to talk about how strong and great she was and how these clods of her fellow men were like not giving her enough credit. So he was really into the whole Mina aspect of the book Dracula. So that was my experience reading this book. I got a lot of the new woman thing.
Do you think I could go through and give a plot synopsis of this?
I can think of no one better equipped to do so than yourself.
Fantastic. So I think I'm going to give a quick overview of the plot, and then I'm going to go through our main characters.
Great.
I think I might do those in reverse order.
Okay.
So we have our Monster Squad. So our Monster Squad consists of Jonathan Harker. He is a lawyer. He's a new lawyer. There is Mina Murray, who is his fiance.
Later, his wife.
Yep. We have her friend, Lucy Westenra, who is also being courted by 3 different people. Quincy P. Morris.
Of Texas.
Dr. John Seward, who is
Of an asylum.
of an asylum. And we also have Lord Arthur Holmwood,
Yes.
whose father dies and he becomes Lord Godalming halfway through the book. So his character name changes, but he's still him.
Yeah.
They're our Monster Squad, and they are at times led by Dr. Abraham Van Helsing, or Professor Abraham Van Helsing.
Of Amsterdam.
Yes. And he's an older guy who knows all kinds of stuff about the occult. Now, the person they are fighting is Count Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So we have him.
Of Transylvania.
Famously of Transylvania. Now, we also have, there really are not many other characters. There's one that I'm going to mention, though, and that is Renfield. Renfield is someone who is an occupant. He's an occupant of the asylum.
He's an inmate of the asylum.
Yes. And he has established some kind of weird psychic connection with Dracula. And that's what we know.
Yes.
And Renfield is creepy and crazy and in the asylum.
And eats flies.
He eats a whole bunch of things.
Yeah.
For the life you see. So
Yes.
those are our cast of characters. Here is the plot as quickly as I can say it.
Oh, boy.
Jonathan Harker has to go to Transylvania to sell a piece of property in London to a Transylvanian count who is Count Dracula. He leaves Mina at home, who is his fiance, and he goes and he meets Count Dracula. And then he basically spends a month being a prisoner of Dracula while Dracula steals his clothes, sends a bunch of letters pretending to be him, and then basically abandons him while he fills up a bunch of cases of dirt and then goes to London.
Yes, and also encounters sexy vampire ladies.
Oh, there's lots of sexy vampire ladies throughout all of these iterations.
Yes.
So Dracula gets to London. Jonathan's story basically takes him, he escapes and he is sick and he gets nursed back to health and he makes it back to London eventually as well. In London, we have Lucy and all of her suitors. She eventually accepts the marriage proposal from Lord Arthur Holmwood, Lord Godalming. And Dracula arrives in London, kills Lucy, and as a result of this, the Monster Squad forms. And then they start chasing him, and Jonathan gets back, and then Dracula says, well, now I'm going to kill Mina. I'm going to turn her into my bride. And basically what we're left with for the last third of the book is Monster Squad and Mina are all racing to Transylvania to intercept Dracula, who is also racing to Transylvania in a box on a boat. And then they all come together at the end and they kill Dracula.
Yes. And not all of them make it out alive.
Yeah.
Quincy P. Morris bites it.
Rest in peace, you beautiful Texan, you. Do you feel like I left anything out that's actually big?
I mean...
if that was literally all of it was, it'd be a really boring book.
Yeah, I mean, you left out a number of details, but I'm sure we'll come to them as we progress through the 11 films that we watched.
Yes. So I think it would actually be, let's jump into it.
Okay.
I think we should get started.
Let's do it.
With the least scary version of Count Dracula that we watched.
Drum roll, please.
So the least scary one that we watched, our first Dracula of the day, was Count Dracula from 1977. This was a BBC miniseries. It's about 2.5 hours long. It was directed by Philip Saville. It was written by Gerald Savory. And can I list some of the people who were in the cast?
Please do.
So as Dracula, we have Louis Jourdan, who is a couple of things. Super sexy.
French.
And French.
You may know him as the romantic lead in the film Gigi.
Which I did not.
Yes. You did not. And even when I showed you a clip, you're like, yeah, I don't know why you're showing this to me. It's a movie he was in before. Sure.
He's a very sexy Dracula.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna. I want to get into this.
Yeah.
This is bullshit.
Yeah. He was, well, when you say he's a very sexy Dracula,
Yes.
he's a very handsome Dracula, but I think we both found him to be a very boring Dracula.
Yes.
He did not have a lot of levels to him.
No, and that's the thing. What he was doing, if it was, as you say, accompanied by other levels.
Yeah.
If he's just very calm the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that they were trying to make him sinister and compelling in that way, but it doesn't work because he's that the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah.
All throughout. But I really want to jump in, and I have a bone to pick with anyone that tries to make sexy Dracula.
Yeah.
And this is the thing you were talking about, what different filmmakers see when they do Dracula.
Yeah.
How fucked up is it that someone could look at the Dracula in the book and say, oh, he's sexy. that explains why these women are dying as a result of him killing them.
Well, let me just get into some Freudian shit here.
Go for it.
I mean, this is
which one of the people said that it was Freudian?
the very first
C.F.
one that
Bentley.
you talked about.
So you might be agreeing with C.F. Bentley
I
right now.
probably am, because here is what the plot of this book is literally about. A mysterious man comes to the bedrooms of young women at night, penetrates their bodies with his body, often involving blood, and
There is explicitly a swap of bodily fluids.
yes. But the part that I want to really hone in on there is like the part where he is literally penetrating their bodies with a part of his body and causing them to mysteriously die. Like, that is what is happening, draining their life force with his body. So you could be forgiven for reading a sexual element into that text. And I think there is a sexual element in that text, but that doesn't mean it's sexy.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the book isn't sexual. It's not sexy, though.
Yeah, it's not sexy. I mean, like, it is non-consensual what he is doing to them, which is sort of by definition not sexy.
Right?
Yes.
Like, what I see filmmakers trying to take this character and they're trying to say, I need to make it believable that this old man would penetrate the bodies of these young women and take their freedom and kill them.
Yes.
I need to make it believable. Here's what makes it believable.
If he's hot.
If he's hot and they're into it.
Yeah.
That's what makes it believable, because it would never happen otherwise.
Obviously not.
This is something that comes from men making this story.
Yes.
And I'm not saying it's bad that men make this story.
No,
I'm just
it's
saying,
bad. You can say it's bad.
like, I can connect the dots on this one pretty easily, I would say.
yeah. There's a lot of male gaze happening in every adaptation of this story that we watched.
Quite a lot. Quite a lot. Rereading this book in the Me Too era is amazing.
Yeah.
Because basically what you have is this old guy who has gotten away with predating upon young women for a really, really long time.
Literally centuries.
And the thing that brings him down is a bunch of people coming together, telling their stories and getting it down on paper about what he did and joining forces to take him down.
I think you just found your senior thesis right there, babe.
Like, I'm not saying that's in the book. I'm saying I would be interested to see a version of the story that took that perspective.
Yeah, that would
where
be fascinating.
Dracula is actually the villain.
Yeah.
And he's not... Anyway, okay, so here's some other people that are in this movie. We have a number of good people. We have someone with the most amazing name I've ever heard, which is Susan Penhaligon as Lucy Westenra, and Judy Bowker as Mina Westenra.
Yep.
Wait.
Oh, we have to make a huge disclaimer about the characters and names, or this is going to get very confusing. There were very, very few adaptations that just took the names straight out of the book. There's always something that's switched around. There are characters that are compressed. There are characters that they just gave them the name of another character for no apparent reason. There are versions where just the names of Lucy and Mina are just flipped, sometimes for a reason that makes sense, sometimes not. If you are confused, so are we. But I just want to sort of disclaim, if we're talking about Lucy in one version, that might be the same person who is also called Lucy in a different version, but is essentially playing the part of Mina. It's very strange. It's actually really interesting. I feel like of all the adaptations in general that we've watched, like, just in terms of the names, I've never seen anything played so fast and loose with. It's very interesting why people chose to do this.
Yeah, no, it's definitely weird. I mean, some people always come out unscathed. Like, Van Helsing is always Van Helsing.
Yeah.
Jonathan Harker is always Jonathan Harker.
But Van Helsing's relationship to the other characters is not always the same.
No, but that's the thing. I don't think that's changing Van Helsing. I think that's changing the other character.
Yeah, but like sometimes Mina's Seward's daughter.
That's what I'm... Like, That's literally what I'm saying.
I gotcha.
I'm saying Van Helsing never changes, but sometimes they decide that Mina is his daughter.
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes Seward is someone's dad rather than someone's suitor. Like, it is very confusing and very strange. And we actually may not go into it for every single one because it would be repetitive and, like, not interesting, probably.
Yeah, but here's, like, a good example. This one makes Mina and Lucy sisters,
Mm-hmm.
and it also takes Quincy P. Morris and Arthur Homewood and combines them into Quincy P. Homewood, who is still from Texas.
Yeah. So I just want to, like, a little peek behind the curtain in terms of what watching this was like. We were watching this, and it's a BBC miniseries from the 70s. The quality was not amazing.
And we watched these in chronological order, so we already kind of knew what to expect with this one.
And the character comes on screen and, oh, hello, I'd like to introduce, my friend Quincy P. Homewood or whatever. And Jeremy goes, oh my God, what is this guy going to sound like? And the next words out of this man's mouth were,
well, to tell you the truth, I do have rather a headache. It must be the excitement of seeing Quincy again.
Whoa there, little lady. I sure hope that ain't the effect I'll always have on you.
It was amazing.
It was amazing.
I was horrified.
We basically both peed laughing. I think we watched it like 3 or 4 times because it was so funny.
This guy easily the worst Homewood.
Yeah, really
like,
bad.
The thing that marks this one for me is that it is really, really boring. You've got a Dracula that is...
That's what I expected you to say. It's just so boring.
It's super boring. This was the most boring one that we watched.
Yeah.
Dracula's totally ineffective in it. It gets points for being kind of faithful.
Yeah, it had a couple details that you didn't see in a lot of other ones. Like Dracula had like hairy palms. And the way that Mina reacts after being bitten in the book, she just keeps saying like unclean, unclean. It's like sort of very religious, and she's got this scar on her forehead from where Van Helsing like presses like what is it called? The
communion wafer.
Communion wafer. And they keep talking about like how sad it is to see this scar on her forehead. And that was in this. And those are some details that we didn't see in a lot of them. It was kind of rare to see. So like, as you say, like in terms of like things they pulled out of the book that they actually took the time to illustrate, it had that.
Yeah.
But in terms of being a suspenseful good horror movie, what would you say?
No, it's not.
It's
not
not.
suspenseful, and it's not horrific. It's not effective at all.
Yeah.
Like the thing I was going to say is that like it's really boring. Dracula's really boring. The characters are not memorable. Like, I can say that because I literally cannot remember most of them.
No, I can't remember Lucy or Mina. I tried to look it
Quincy's
up.
got a terrible accent in this one. The other thing this one does that I hate is that it was produced right at the dawn of like video effects. So it's trying to be very artistic, but using video effects from 1977 with like inverted colors and superimposition and things like that. It comes off as the cheesiest shit I've ever seen.
It had some like weird avant-garde stuff in it. It was really strange.
Yeah, it didn't work.
No, it didn't work.
This one didn't work. I do have one thing I want to say about this, and I'm glad we're starting with it because this is notable.
Okay.
Of all the ones we watched, this one had my very favorite Van Helsing.
Oh, no.
Of any of them. And it just kills me that he was in this one. And this was Frank Finlay as Van Helsing. He was the perfect embodiment of this character. He was just kind and beautiful and funny and just... I loved him. I absolutely loved him.
Yeah.
He was definitely very empathetic and sympathetic in a way that Van Helsing wasn't in a lot of them.
Yeah.
He was someone who was confident that he was right and confident that they needed to destroy Dracula. But like anytime he was talking to Mina or Lucy, he was kind and not condescending.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And that's how he is in the book, despite the fact that he's written with kind of a ridiculous, like, Dutch dialect.
And also a ridiculous, like, 1897 sexism.
Yeah.
That's depressing.
It is depressing.
But this one has my favorite Van Helsing. Frank Finlay's amazing. So I think it's worth watching for him. But Lord, this one's boring.
Yeah, fast forward through all the avant-garde shit.
Yeah. Now we get to one that, like, it's not scarier. It's a little creepier, maybe. And we have Count Dracula from 1970. This one was written by Augusto Finocchi. It was directed by Jesus Franco. This was one of those, like, it was produced by people from every country.
Yeah.
So, like, every actor speaks a different language. and it was released in every country, dubbed in every different language.
Right.
And this one is notable for starring Christopher Lee as Dracula.
Yes, but not
the way that most people would think of him as
Yeah.
Dracula, because he also starred in all of the Hammer films as Dracula.
Yeah, I mean, God bless him. He's a working actor.
Yeah, and spoiler alert, like, his first Hammer film is going to show up later on this list.
Yes.
Because it was more effective than this.
What we're saying is this is not the Christopher Lee Dracula movie that you think of when you're like, oh yeah, Christopher Lee played Dracula like 12 times. It's not this one.
No. So this one is generally referred to as being one of the most faithful adaptations. And I will say, it is super faithful.
Yeah.
Like, all the characters are the characters from the book. Everyone appears and everyone has the right names. And the plot basically happens the right way.
Yeah, it is interesting because I've also heard and seen the one we just talked about referred to as the most faithful or one of the most faithful, and it is interesting that those are both the least scary.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Not just least scary, but least effective.
Least effective,
in
yeah.
any way. Least entertaining
Yeah.
of all of them. This one, here's some things. Some stuff kind of in no particular order. Would you say this is a sexy one?
This is definitely has elements that the director found sexy for sure.
What's another movie that this director directed
This-
the next year?
This director directed a movie starring the same person who, the same young woman who played Lucy in this, whose name was
Soledad Miranda.
Yeah,
She's
she's
very sexy.
very sexy lady. And he directed another film called Vampiros Lesbos.
It's a classic.
Which I found a little clip online, and it's just two women drinking wine very sensually and looking into each other's eyes, and then one of them faints. That's a clip from the movie. It had no dialogue.
It's my understanding that all relationships between two women are basically that.
That's basically how that works. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
The one thing I did like about this, though, is that Dracula himself is not sexy.
No.
Like,
No.
the one thing this has going for it is it has Christopher Lee as Dracula.
Yeah.
And he is imposing, and he cares about presenting this character in a good way. And a lot of the way he does it is like the Dracula from the book.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't portray Dracula as, like, young and sexy. He portrays Dracula as kind of terrifying and violent.
Yeah, and it does do the thing where he kind of goes from old to young as
Yeah.
he's being revived by the blood of these young virgins.
Right. There's some other people that I'd like to mention who are in the cast.
Okay.
We have Herbert Lom as Van Helsing. He's a known actor. We also have Klaus Kinski as Renfield.
Yeah. Super interesting because he doesn't have any lines.
No.
I suspect he didn't speak English at the time.
I don't know how much English he spoke, but
Yeah.
they decided to make him silent. I have this to say about his Renfield.
Yes.
I found it to be a captivating performance.
It was very interesting. I mean, again, what an interesting choice to make him silent, and also in a completely modern insane asylum with padded walls. It was not period accurate.
Yeah, this is executed very poorly.
Yeah.
This movie is not amazing.
This director definitely felt he had something to say.
Yeah. He wanted to make it, and
Yeah.
he wanted to make it kind of sexy,
Yeah.
and he wanted to make it modern and disturbing, and parts of it are disturbing. There's a part where I think this is the one where you thought Renfield was writing with poop on the walls.
Yeah, there definitely is a part where he may have been doing that. There is a
It
part.
was food though.
Yeah, well, what is poop? It just digested
Well,
food.
this was pre-food. This
Yeah.
was current food, not past food. Current food.
There is a scene where they eat a baby.
Yes.
That is from the book. Not a lot of the versions really dove into the baby eating aspect, but there definitely is a scene where they eat the baby.
It does have the three brides of Dracula.
Yeah.
They are in it. They eat the baby. They're in the book.
And then I would say this version was notable for the final showdown with Dracula just being sort of a 5-minute compilation of different shots from different angles of different types of taxidermy animals.
Yeah.
If you recall.
Yeah, I do recall.
That was very strange.
Well,
It
they
was
were trying
extremely strange.
They were trying to make the animals come to life for the the monster squad
Yeah.
in the castle, but you can basically see the hands of the crew members moving the taxidermy
You can literally see
a
the
possum.
wooden mounts that they're mounted on because they borrowed them from some natural history museum or something.
It didn't work.
It did not work.
This one doesn't work. It doesn't not work as much as the first one, but it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Should we move on?
Yeah, I think we should.
Let's go.
Okay. This is a fun one, and I think we may spend a little time talking about it. In 1992, Francis Ford Coppola decided to direct a version of Dracula that was going for something. He wanted to imply to the audience that this was going to be a more faithful retelling.
Again with the faithful. The faithful ones are all at the bottom of the list. And I'm going to do a little bit of a spoiler. The least faithful one that we watched is way near the top of our Scariness Index here.
So he made Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula.
This is the first one where I feel like there are people who are going to disagree with our ranking. Why would you say, let's get it out of the way, why would you say this ranks so low on our list in terms of scariness?
Because it was so fucking goofy.
Right?
It was ridiculous.
This is a goofy, campy movie.
Yeah, very campy.
Incredibly. And the problem is, even though there's stuff that might work in this movie, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't work in this movie.
Yeah.
Let's get it out of the way. For example, how would you rank the acting of Gary Oldman in this movie?
I mean, it's over the top.
Right?
It's not bad.
Is it good, though?
Yeah, it's good acting.
Yes. Right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the design of this character, like, even if you haven't seen this movie, you have seen a version of Dracula, whether it's a picture or a parody of Dracula wearing like a long red robe with these like two big like white buns of hair at the top of his head.
He looks like he should be in the Golden Girls.
Yeah, like this is an exceptionally iconic and beautifully designed. The costumes in this movie are actually gorgeous.
They are.
Until they get bizarre, which I guess you could say about a lot of it. Like, at one point, I literally just wrote down, what the fuck is she wearing? The outfit that Lucy gets buried in is insane.
But keeping it to the acting.
Yes, I'm so sorry.
That's what I wanted to talk about.
I'm so sorry.
So Gary Oldman's very good in this.
Yes.
A lot of people are really good in this.
Yeah.
You also have Keanu Reeves as Jonathan Harker.
I mean, I don't want to dunk on Keanu Reeves.
No.
Famously miscast
No,
in
but
this
here's
role.
the thing. I don't want to dunk on Keanu Reeves. I don't blame Keanu Reeves for this at all, but I think this is indicative of the fact that this movie I don't think this movie deserves a level of consideration that some people feel it does.
Yeah.
As much as Coppola clearly was passionate about making it, he still cast Keanu Reeves as one of his main characters.
And didn't give him an accent coach. Like,
Yeah.
that's the thing that's sort of unforgivable.
Like, this is
poor guy.
This is a thing that fundamentally does not work and takes away from the movie.
Yeah.
Again, I don't blame Keanu Reeves.
He was doing his best.
But this is a horrible choice.
Yeah.
This movie would be so much higher if it weren't for so many little choices throughout that are so just not thoughtful and undermine the movie.
Yeah, I will say, if we're talking about casting,
Yes.
I think Winona Ryder is beautifully cast as Mina.
I think she's beautiful.
I don't think the script does her any favors, but I just think like this movie is just the height of her beauty. I think she looks amazing. We we're watching this movie, and even though we did Little Women a couple years ago, I don't think we had ever really talked about like we just kind of looked at each other and we were like, she's very pretty. And you were like, yeah, have we talked about how Winona Ryder is very pretty? And I was like, I don't know that we've explicitly discussed it. She's gorgeous in this movie. Like I said, the costumes are really beautiful on her. She's always in green and like these like leafy nature designs. Like I think more thought went in. I think I said this to you. I think more thought went into the costumes. And the costume designer was more intentional about what each character was trying to express through their clothing than like anything else in this movie.
Yeah.
I don't know who the costume designer was.
Can I jump in for a second?
Yes, of course you can.
I feel bad about what I'm gonna say.
Okay.
I'm gonna disagree, and this might be a little unfair.
That's fine.
I do think Winona Ryder was miscast in this.
Okay.
And what I'm about to say, the reason it's unfair is because I think maybe I'm putting a little too much responsibility on individual actors. I expected a little more from her, even though the role was really underwritten.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was underwritten enough that an actor couldn't have overcome it.
I see.
I don't know that she had it in her to overcome this material.
I see.
And what this role needed, what all the roles in this movie needed, were actors who were able to overcome the material and overcome the type of direction they were getting.
Yeah, because it sounds like you're saying Gary Oldman was able to do that.
Yes, I do think
Dracula.
so. I think Anthony Hopkins was.
Oh yeah, he was quite good.
I think Tom Waits was as Renfield. He's fucking bugfuck and amazing in this movie. I think this movie is full of a lot of people who were just kind of left to their own devices and just had the script and had to make do with what they had. I think that's true for a lot of them. I think it's true for Winona Ryder. I think it's true for Lucy. I think it's true for her crew. This is the one where Arthur Holmwood is played by Cary Elwes. And then we have Billy Campbell as Quincy Morris. And it's great to just have an actor who can say, but the difference between me and other Quincy Morrises is I can speak with a real American accent.
Oh boy.
We have
It's a deep cut.
good people. We have Richard E. Grant as Dr. Seward. We have really good people in this, and I think very few of them were able to overcome the dialogue and overcome the direction because the movie didn't feel like it was directed with the acting in mind.
No, I would not say so. I would not say that of any of Coppola's movies. Although, you know, we did have the Coppola trademark of a Catholic ceremony being interspersed with cuts of violence, scenes of violence.
Totally in this.
This literally the baptism scene from The Godfather is in this movie.
God, the mark of Coppola in this, I feel like there's two big things in this movie that I just put squarely at the feet of Coppola. One of them is there's too many references to early cinema in this movie in a really formal, superficial way. Like, he really responded to the fact that the movie, the book and the story is set at the dawn of cinema.
Yeah.
But the book doesn't have anything to do with that. So you're just putting the thing in that you like to do. So there's shots that look like they're from a silent movie, and he really wanted to have like old school optical effects and not do any kind of digital effects in this movie. And that's fine, but it's just superficial stuff that doesn't help the story being told. But it clearly is the thing that was important to him.
Well, it was important to him in the script too, because there's this part where Dracula's like wandering around New York and runs into Mina, and he's like,
New York?
Let me take that back.
Okay.
See, this is how Coppola it is. It's like old New York.
Yeah.
It doesn't even look like London. There's this part where Dracula is like wandering around London and he runs into Mina and he's like, yes, I would like to see your moving picture show. I hear it is the wonder of the world. And she is like, yes, it is wondrous. Let us go and see it. Like, what the fuck?
It's filmmakers making films about filmmaking.
But at the same time, so like all of this is happening while at the same time Coppola, who is not a master of subtext, is like, oh yeah, like sexy Dracula. Yeah, sexy Dracula. Like, you could argue, as I mentioned before, that there is sexual like text in this book, like that it is so over the top that it is text rather than subtext. But I am not willing to concede that text is Lucy getting plowed in a graveyard by a werewolf. Like, that, I'm not willing to go there.
Well, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
Because like I said, there's two things about Coppola that I see in this. One is this obsession with old cinema, and the other one is Coppola's views about sex.
Yeah.
Here's a thing I found out about the making of this movie.
Oh, God.
How comfortable do you think Coppola was having conversations with Sadie Frost, who played Lucy, and Winona Ryder, who played Mina, having conversations with them about scenes they would have to do that were sexual in nature?
Uncomfortable.
He went through their acting coach and told them to tell them what to do.
Oh my God.
For one of the scenes, apparently, there's like a scene where Lucy's in bed and she's thinking of Dracula and responding in a very orgasmic kind of way.
Yes.
Apparently he put Gary Oldman like behind the camera and had him say dirty things to her to get her in the
God.
Like, this is someone who wanted to see what they wanted to see, and the only way that they could make this whole thing make sense was to make the women enjoy it.
Ugh. It's disgusting.
And did a poor job.
Yeah, I mean, even like Mina has this line at one point, like after she's married and she's talking to Lucy about sort of what that experience has been like. And she it's a line that I basically paraphrased as like, well, now I see that sex could be good if it were with someone else. Like, she's not fulfilled in her marriage, let's just say.
Yeah.
She's ripe for the plucking by sexy Dracula over there.
Well, I mean, Jonathan is a shell of a man at this point.
His hair is gray.
This was bullshit for me.
Yeah.
So like in the book, Bram Stoker refers to Jonathan's hair as going gray after his experience being locked in Castle Dracula.
Yeah.
Like, okay, as a literary device, that works.
Yeah.
That works in a book. But in a movie, it's just Keanu Reeves with baby powder in his hair.
Yeah, for real.
It just looks dumb. It doesn't
dumb.
do any. There's so many other things you can do with makeup and costuming to make someone look emotionally the way they're supposed to look as a result of their horrific experience.
Right.
Just making their hair gray doesn't do it. I just find that so intensely unthoughtful.
It's very like 7th grade, like middle school production of Dracula. Like, oh, we'll just put some baby powder in his hair. It really doesn't.
Ugh.
It really does not look good.
Tonally, this movie's all over the place.
Yep.
Like, this movie has some moments in it that are fucking hysterical, genuinely funny,
Yeah.
but so out of step with the tone of the rest of the movie that I don't know why they're there. There's one moment where I don't even want to spoil the jokes,
Yeah.
but there are moments where you see that basically they're there to show how glib and how normal these incredibly violent occult experiences are for Van Helsing. And they're really funny and they play really well in the moment. But like I said, they're out of step with the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
And I think it's mismanagement of tone.
Poorly directed, I think, just in general, this film you could just boil down to.
It's just blah.
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 Blah, I'm Dracula.
God, I'm looking through all my notes and just this is the biggest note that I have. It's set up as a horror movie in a very modern way in that Lucy is portrayed as a slut.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of slut shaming in this movie.
And that's like a classic new horror thing. Like, sluts get punished by movie monsters. That's what happens. Jason kills them with a machete. And she gets killed by Dracula after getting plowed by his werewolf form in a graveyard.
So that is what happens.
But she's so promiscuous with these men.
Yeah,
And it's so
gross.
judgmental towards her. It's saying she deserved it. I don't like it.
Yeah, it's really gross.
That's Bram Stoker's Dracula 1992. And at the end of the day, like, that's just a shitty thing to say. I'm doing Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah, no one else has done Bram Stoker's Dracula. Like,
No, you're
are you
not.
saying that there was a graveyard wolf man sex scene in Bram Stoker's Dracula? Because I can tell you there was not, because I read the book. Did you read the book? I don't think so.
It also stole things from past versions of Dracula. Like the two things that it adds, one, Dracula really wants Mina because she looks exactly like his long lost love that
Yeah.
died hundreds of years ago. That's not in the book. That was in another version that we're going to watch. And the other thing it adds is that Dracula was Vlad the Impaler.
Right.
That's not in the book either. And in fact, like most of the evidence shows that Stoker may not even have had a really good idea of who Vlad the Impaler was when he wrote the book.
Yeah.
He wrote it based on just a ton of research he was doing into Transylvanian folklore.
Yeah.
And like Vlad Tepes shows up, but he never said he was Vlad the Impaler.
Right.
This was a thing that got added later and I think was used better in other versions of this.
Yes.
So to call it Bram Stoker's Dracula and have those things, I think is disingenuous.
Yes.
I didn't care for that.
No, it was not good.
Do you want to really piss people off?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about our next one on the list?
Yeah, we should go ahead and do that.
Okay, in 1931, Todd Browning directed Bela Lugosi as Dracula.
Again, we are not talking about
Please don't turn this off. Please don't turn off the show. Please hear us out.
we are not talking about the successfulness or iconicness or movie making skill of any of these. This is the Scariness Index.
Yes.
The Scariness Index. Okay. 1931, Todd Browning's Dracula starring Bela Lugosi.
Here is one thing that I kind of thought going into this, and I'm going to show my ignorance a little bit right now. As we were watching it, I was thinking, man, this is boring. And it's not scary.
Yeah.
And everyone loves it. You know what? Here's what people probably love. When people think of Bela Lugosi as Dracula, they're probably thinking of like all of the Dracula movies he did and not just this one. Kind of like when we did Frankenstein last year.
Yeah.
The first Frankenstein is okay.
It's wicked boring.
And they created an iconic version of the monster.
Yeah.
That's true. But then Bride of Frankenstein later was way better.
Bride of Frankenstein's great.
Way, way better.
Yeah.
And I think when most people say Frankenstein was amazing, what they're really talking about is Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah.
So I thought this about Dracula. And then I went and I looked and I realized, like, he played Dracula twice.
Once in a parody.
One is in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, which is a movie that I love deeply. And to his credit, he plays that movie totally straight.
Yeah.
He plays it as Dracula. He's not going for laughs. He knows that that's not his job. But this was the only other time he played the character. And I have to accept, as you say, that he created something really, really iconic.
Yes.
But
the movie
it's just boring.
is boring.
It's
I'm
really
sorry.
boring.
I'm sorry. The movie, if you haven't watched it recently, go back with an open mind. The character is, again, as you say, iconic. The design, the performance of that character is wonderful to watch. But the movie around it is boring.
Yes, it is.
It's boring.
This is like, here's a thing that this movie starts to do, and I believe it's the first one we watched that did this.
Yeah.
Dracula can turn into a bat. We know this. And so at the beginning of the movie, Renfield shows up in Transylvania. Wait, what?
What?
So this was a big thing that they changed. So it's Renfield, instead of Renfield just being a crazy person, Renfield is actually the solicitor going to Transylvania. So what they've done is they've demoted Jonathan Harker from main character to like supporting character.
Oh, but he's very handsome. He's very handsome.
He is. They turned him into just an ineffectual leading man.
Yeah.
He's not really much of anything in this movie. Renfield is the one who goes on like a journey. So Renfield is in the coach going to Castle Dracula. The coach is being driven by Dracula, which is from the book. He doesn't know that though, because he never read the book. And then he looks out of the carriage and he sees that what is actually driving the horses is a bat.
A bat on a string.
It doesn't make any sense that Dracula would choose this moment to turn into a bat. Also, a flappy fake bat flopping wildly on a string above two horses is kind of the opposite of being scary.
I mean, it did become sort of a beautiful tradition, both in like the land of movie making and in our viewing of these movies, that every time a bat came on screen, it was clearly being held by a string from up above and just flopping around, which would cause Jeremy to scream, "That's not how bats fly!"
It's bullshit.
It's bullshit.
And the movie's full of stuff like this. It's full of things that are like quote unquote scary that are totally ineffective in the moment.
Yeah.
And again, I really hope that if you really wanted to turn us off a few minutes ago when we said this was low on our list, I hope you stayed and listened, and I hope you still will continue to listen. This was our reaction to it. We are not trying to take away from the impact that this had on cinema and how iconic a figure Bela Lugosi cuts as Dracula. We're not trying to take that away.
No, we just found it boring to watch.
My goodness, it was boring. It was just incredibly boring. It was creepy. Now, it's higher on the list because there is some creepy stuff
There's
in it.
definitely creepy stuff.
And for me, the creepy stuff was all Renfield.
Yeah.
Dwight Fry as Renfield, once he kind of goes crazy, is legitimately creepy. Like, there is a shot in this where the boat that's containing Dracula, the Demeter, this is in every single version. It arrives in England, and the only person that they find on the boat is Renfield down in the hold, and he's staring up at the camera as they find him laughing, kind of humming to himself maniacally. Genuinely creepy. And that is why it's above like 3 other versions, because it had something that kind of stuck with me.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
That is fair. And I will say, too, like, again, we said we weren't going to kind of talk in absolutes, but I don't think there was a single one of these that didn't have the boat and the shipwreck and the guy lashed to the wheel.
Yes.
That was like something that clearly made a huge impact in all of these filmmakers, because they all included not only the shipwreck, but this very specific image of the captain lashed to the wheel, which is also, it's also very evocative. Like in the book, it talks about like how like the ropes like were through to the bone and like all of this stuff. It's like, it's very gross. It's just interesting that that was something that clearly people responded to who were makers of these movies.
Yeah. Hey, do you want to take an intermission really quickly?
Yeah, let's do it. What could we possibly talk about in an intermission?
Let's talk about our bonus Dracula.
What?
So as we said at the beginning, we watched 11 versions of Dracula, and this one, I don't know, I thought it would probably end up as the first one on our list to talk about, because it is by definition the least scary, but it is a Dracula movie that I fucking love. And that is Mel Brooks' Dracula Dead and Loving It from 1995.
Yes.
That I have now made you watch twice.
Fun fact, the first time...
hang on 1 second. I'm not going to let you paint this entire experience to all of our listeners. I want to paint it first.
Okay.
I love Mel Brooks. I adore this man. I adore his movies. I am a diehard Mel Brooks fan. I found a review of this movie that said the only people who will find this funny are diehard Mel Brooks fans. Like, okay.
Like as if that was a bad thing to be.
Fuck you. I'm not going to apologize for being a diehard Mel Brooks fan. I think Mel Brooks made a mistake when he was making this movie, and it wasn't to make this movie. He was right to make this movie. It was a mistake to make it color. I genuinely believe that. I think he was really smart. We have evidence that he knew about this, because when he made Young Frankenstein, the studio wanted him to make it in color, and he said, no, it's black and white, because the movie that I'm lampooning is black and white. That is what I see in my head. That's what this is. And this movie came out capitalizing. It was like 2 or 3 years after Bram Stoker's Dracula. It was clearly capitalizing on the popularity of that movie, but it's not a parody of Coppola's movie. It's a parody of Bela Lugosi's Dracula movie. It's a parody of Todd Browning.
Yeah, but...
It should have been in black and white. It absolutely should have been.
And...
The first time we watched it, and this is the way I've been watching it for years now, is when I put it in, I go on the TV and I reduce the color to 0 so that it's a black and white movie.
And did you tell me that you had done this?
We disagree because I did.
You did not.
I absolutely told you.
You did not tell me.
I think it makes it funnier. I think, here's the deal. You're one of 3 people. If you thought this movie was stupid, I don't know that making it black and white is going to make you think it wasn't stupid.
I did think it was stupid.
If you thought this movie was like kind of funny, I bet making it black and white will make it funnier. If you already understand that this movie is great, then it can only help.
Yeah.
I genuinely recommend watching this movie in black and white.
I preferred
it makes it better.
I preferred it in color.
I disagree. I disagree with that assessment. Mel Brooks is great, but he's not infallible. He was wrong. This movie should be in black and white. I love this movie. It's just the fucking best. That's my first note, by the way, that I wrote. I just read you my first note.
Good.
I love the fact too that it came out a couple of years after Robin Hood Men in Tights did, which did the exact same thing where it was capitalizing on the success of Robin Hood Prince of Thieves, but it's a parody of the adventures of Robin Hood.
Yeah, which is funny because Robin Hood Men in Tights is one of my favorite movies, which I also admit is like a super dumb movie.
I honestly think that Dracula Dead and Loving It and Robin Hood Men in Tights are the same in terms of quality.
I disagree.
They are the same.
I disagree.
They both sit squarely below Young Frankenstein and Blazing Saddles and the producers. They are not the greatest movies Mel Brooks ever made. They're just movies that are made by really funny people, really talented people who just genuinely want to make an audience laugh. Like this movie is Leslie Nielsen, Mel Brooks, Peter McNichol. Peter McNichol's impression of Renfield from the Bela Lugosi
that is
one.
very good. It's very good.
On.
And Anne Bancroft is like the gypsy woman in this. Anne Bancroft, Mel Brooks' wife, has a little cameo, and she just does this thing where she just jiggles her throat to make her voice sound spooky. And I said to you, I bet that's just like something she does at home to make Mel Brooks laugh. Like it was very lovingly shot, this dumb scene in this dumb movie, but like it's his wife that we know he loved dearly, and so it was actually kind of heartwarming to watch.
I love it. You've got Harvey Korman as Dr. Seward. Harvey Korman's never not great in anything. And like honestly, one of my favorite actors in the whole thing, because you've got great people. You've got Lisette Anthony as Lucy Westenra. You have Amy Yazbek as Mina. Steven Weber as Jonathan Harker.
Yeah.
The scene in this movie, for those that have seen it, may know what I'm talking about, but the scene in this movie where Jonathan and Van Helsing go to the crypt to kill Lucy after she's become Nosferatu is the funniest, for me, the funniest scene in the entire movie. I think it's incredible.
Yeah.
And I think Steven Weber sells this movie just so well. I think this movie's great.
Did you mention that Mel Brooks plays Van Helsing?
He's so good as Van Helsing.
He's actually like he's good enough that like I feel like he could play Van Helsing in a serious production of Dracula.
Agreed.
Like he actually does an amazing job with it.
And I think Leslie Nielsen does a good job as Dracula.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
he's still, I think he was getting into his post Naked Gun phase where he was doing comedies and he was being a little too winky about it. But in this one, he is playing it a little more, because the whole thing that made Leslie Nielsen so funny is that he played his parts completely straight while ridiculous things were happening around him. This one isn't quite that, but I still think he understands that what they're doing is making fun of Bela Lugosi.
Yeah.
And goofing on someone who, it's only funny if he plays it straight.
Right.
And he does play it straight for most of the movie.
Yeah.
I adore it.
Yeah.
And I know you want to move on, so
yeah,
let's move on.
I want to move on, but it is fun. It's a fun movie.
It's not officially part of our list.
Yeah.
So that takes us to number 6 from the bottom
Yes.
of our list. And that is one that I'm very excited to hear you talk about. This was, I'd never seen it before. It was fun until it wasn't. And this was Dracula, simply Dracula, from 1979, directed by John Badham, who also directed Saturday Night Fever, Short Circuit, War Games. It was produced by Marvin and Walter Mirisch of the Mirisch Corporation, who I'm pretty sure the only other movie they ever did was Fiddler on the Roof. It also has music by John Williams.
There it is.
I'm pretty sure the only other movie he ever did the music for was Fiddler on the Roof, by the way.
Who, John Williams?
Yeah, John Williams. He never really achieved great success in film composition.
Yeah, right.
Written by W.D. Richter. I don't have a joke about him. But let's talk about who starred in this movie.
My nemesis.
Your nemesis.
My nemesis.
Donald Pleasance.
No.
Lawrence Olivier.
No. Lawrence Olivier and I are best buds.
I want to hear the TED Talk of why Frank Langella is someone that you hate.
Well, sir. So Frank Langella, who I I assume that the powers of my hatred for Frank Langella are so strong that he somehow has received them, and I am also his nemesis. But like, if he's like, no, I like her, she's fine.
You are the Dracula to his Mina Harker.
I may be.
With a psychic connection.
I may be. I mean, recently I actually had this experience with someone at work who, if you work with me and you're listening to this, it is not you, that I assumed we hated each other, and it turned out I was the only person with hatred in my heart. But that's fine.
I feel like everyone's had like a nemesis at work at something like that.
Yeah.
And I would say probably 99% of the time, your nemesis at work doesn't think that you're their nemesis.
Because they don't think about you as nearly as much as you think about them.
That's true.
Yes. Anyway, so when I was in graduate school, I did a big project on a play called A Man for All Seasons, which is one of my favorite plays. It's about Sir Thomas More and Henry VIII and the separation of the Church of England from the Catholic Church, and Thomas More, who was made a martyr because he refused to agree to all this, blah, 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 blah. It's a very fine play. It was made into a very fine movie starring Paul Scofield.
And Robert Shaw, who's shown up on the show several times.
That's right. But there is a character in the play who is not in the movie because he's a strictly theatrical character. And what a lot of people don't know who have only seen the movie and not seen the play is the play was written in this very Brechtian style, that there's a lot of direct address to the audience, and there's this one character that plays a bunch of roles because he's basically the observer bringing the audience in and teaching them about these events. He's called the Common Man, but like he'll switch into like interacting with the other characters in different ways. So like sometimes he's like the cook, and sometimes he's the servant, and sometimes he's like the executioner. Like he's all these different characters, and it's this super, super, super cool theatrical device. And I had never seen a live performance of this play. I'd only seen the movie, and I was so excited to see how they did the Common Man. And so I trotted off to the American Airlines Theater to see this production of A Man for All Seasons starring Frank Langella that I was so excited to see. And I sat in the theater, and I found that they had cut the fucking Common Man from the entire play. It was just a staged version of the movie. And ever since then, I have held hatred in my heart for Frank Langella because I also did not think his performance in that play was very good. So between the loss of the theatrical element that I was so excited to see and the over-the-top showboating performance of like a famously humble character of just like tragically miscast Frank Langella in this role.
I would have seen him as Henry.
I have hated Frank Langella ever since. He's my nemesis.
Yeah.
He ruined this experience for me.
Frank Langella to me is like a cinematic tool.
Yeah.
Like I'm not saying he's a tool. I'm saying
it's like maybe a bad choice of words.
He's not good for every use.
Yeah.
Essentially. And there are parts that he has played that I have adored him in.
Mm-hmm.
I think Frank Langella is an incredibly charismatic and compelling figure on screen if used correctly.
Mm-hmm.
I think Dave is one of the greatest movies ever made, and he's one of the best movie villains ever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, basically any role he plays where he's the bad guy and is somehow smarmy, that I think he's incredible at.
But
so I agree, seeing him as Thomas More doesn't work.
Yes.
I don't think he is built for that role.
No.
So I do think he would probably be built for Dracula.
Right.
And then he played Dracula on stage on Broadway and like won lots of awards for his portrayal. And then they decided so Dracula, it should be said, in the 1920s was made into a play.
Right.
From the book. And this version of the play is what formed the basis for the movie, the Bela Lugosi one.
Mm-hmm.
They say, even though they have very little to do with each other, the play does have a lot more similarity to this version of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So the movie that we see is a result of Frank Langella playing this part on Broadway, and now he's playing the part in a movie.
Yes. I will say, having just said a bunch of negative things about Frank Langella,
Tell me something positive about him.
I do have something specific to say about Frank Langella in 1979.
What's that?
He is unbelievably beautiful.
I was so interested to know what your thoughts were on this when we started watching it. He's incredibly handsome.
My God. my God.
Like, what a face, what a voice.
He's just
so
carved
tall.
out of stone.
Like, he's got
Just-
that, he's got that face that is incredibly handsome, but still soft and beautiful in so many
Just
different ways.
incredibly deep set, dark, piercing eyes. We were on the same page about this one, I
Yes.
think. Yeah, for sure.
Like, young Frank Langella is a very attractive man.
Yes.
His Dracula. Now we get to this movie.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to start with this one. It is higher on our list because there's some creepy stuff in it. Like, he does have a genuinely creepy moment where he's trying to break into, it's Lucy's room.
Oh, they've switched the names. They have not switched who the characters are, but Lucy is Mina and Mina is Lucy.
Also, Mina is Van Helsing's daughter.
And Mina is Van Helsing's daughter, and Van Helsing is freaking Laurence Olivier. So,
phoning it in. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
Absolutely phoning it in.
Yeah, really phoning it in.
This
He's
is
not
not
even like attempting a Dutch accent.
This is not a good performance
No.
from him. It's fine. Like, basically, this would be an amazing performance for anybody else, but because it's Laurence Olivier, it's kind of bullshit.
I believe he was coming to the end of his life. He probably was not well.
It's fine.
It's fine.
No, but there's a moment where Dracula's trying to break into whoever's room, and there's just a scene where you hear this like tapping at the window, and then you pan over, and there's just his eyes staring at you.
It's very creepy.
Great moment, really effective. And there's also later, so this is one where we do have, Lucy gets turned into a vampire, but in this one it's Mina.
Yeah.
And we have Dr. Seward, who is Donald Pleasance, turning in this batshit broad role.
He's Lucy's father.
Yes.
Yes.
He and Van Helsing are deep in the catacombs underneath the hill near the asylum.
Yes.
Because they basically dug up Van Helsing's daughter's grave. They found she's not there. They found a hole in the side of the casket that leads into these tunnels. So now they're deep in these tunnels, and there appears Mina, and she's terrifying looking.
Yeah.
Like they have not gone with the sexy vampire lady thing with her
They've gone
in
with
every
the
other version.
Rotted corpse in this version.
Like, she is the Walking Dead at this point. It is deeply unsettling. I give them props for doing something creepy and scary.
Yeah, I mean, like, even more so given that it's his daughter.
Yes.
Like, it's not like, oh, these are like some guys that like were kind of in love with her. It's like, oh, it's his daughter.
Yeah.
I will say, can I tell you what the when this movie was being advertised, what the subtitle was that was part of like the marketing material?
I bet it was something bullshit.
so
Please
it's
tell me.
Dracula, a love story.
Like, yeah, it's a sexy Dracula.
Yeah.
It's okay. So he kills Mina and then he seduces Lucy. And they definitely don't treat it as, I can't believe we're like so far in and we haven't brought up the concept of thrall yet.
Oh, yeah. There's so much thrall.
Like, the women are always in Dracula's under his thrall, in his thrall.
Yeah, I think you'd say either.
This one genuinely feels like he's just a guy and she's just a lady and he seduces her.
Yeah.
And she's into it the whole time.
Oh, the whole time.
And it doesn't make much fucking sense.
Yeah. Well, poor Lucy. Okay. She's treated horribly in this movie. So, Mina bites it, no pun intended, very, very early in the movie. She does not like linger on dying in the way that we see in other versions or indeed the book. And I think that's because they needed a way to get Van Helsing in, because Van Helsing is her father. So the reason that they send for him is because like his daughter died in their house. The Sewards, Lucy Seward and Dr. Seward, father and daughter. Abraham Van Helsing, Mina Van Helsing, father and daughter. It's very confusing in this version. So, but Mina and Lucy are best friends, and Lucy wakes up one morning, and this is in a lot of the versions, and Mina is like gasping for breath. She can't get air. It's this actually very visceral, like horrible death scene, like of someone suffocating to death. It's awful. So like props for that, I guess. But so she screams for help. Lucy screams for help. Her father, a doctor, comes running in and he's like, oh God, these hysterical women, and just starts slapping Mina in the face like really hard a bunch of times, like as if, oh, this woman's hysterical when in fact she's dying. And as he is slapping her in the face, she commences to die. And then poor Lucy is like sobbing, distraught. Her best friend literally just died in her arms. And her fiance, who I think in this is Jonathan Harker, right?
It is, yeah.
And her dad are both such incredible shits to her about what she just went through, including like directly after the funeral, and I'm talking like immediately they have walked away from the grave, Jonathan Harker is like, oh, well, that's over now. You're going to come back with me to London, right? And we're going to go to this party tonight. And she's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And he gets pissed and drives away. Like, she is mistreated horribly by the men in her life in this movie. It is awful.
This is definitely a movie that answers the question, what if every character in this movie was a piece of shit?
Yeah, essentially, yes.
What if everyone was terrible?
Just everyone's terrible.
And can we talk about the movie as a whole for a second?
Yeah, for sure.
This movie has some things going for it. I actually really enjoyed it at the beginning because it has this really intense energy.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most energetic of every version that we watched.
Mm-hmm.
It's very heightened. Things are constantly happening. You always know exactly how every character feels about every character. Every character is cut in a really clear way. It has this manic energy to it that it becomes so boring over the course of the movie because you never get a chance to connect with anybody. So I didn't care what was happening to any character in this movie.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
Everything is manufactured. There's a moment in the beginning where Mina is leaving the house because there's a shipwreck. But this is a version of the story where there's no Transylvania.
Mm-hmm.
The movie begins with Dracula's ship wrecking on the coast.
Right.
And the ship wrecks, and Mina is being set up as someone who's very timid and very afraid, and it's storming outside. But she goes down to the beach and goes into this cave where she finds Dracula unconscious. The entire time she's going down, it just reeks of, well, she's doing it because it's in the script. She's not doing it because it makes sense for what her character would be doing.
Right.
It has that energy. Things only happen because they need to happen so we can get to the next scene. It's just, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then this.
Yeah.
Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I would say. So it was like the kind of thing where we started off very energized by it because it did have like a good pace. And we were like, oh, because we've seen some of these that were a little boring. But then the pace sort of got exhausting, and then it turned into nothing because it was just like this constant like stream of activity. And as you say, like you never really cared about any of the characters.
Yeah, this movie reeked of Tim Burton to me.
Yeah,
like,
it was Tim Burton-y.
Big and dumb and superficial, and nothing makes sense. But clearly, whoever was at the top said, "I have some imagery that I want people to see."
Yeah, the plot was actually genuinely confusing.
Yeah,
and that's pretty funny considering we watched 11 versions and read the book. Like you'd think we'd kind of be experts on the plot of Dracula by now, but the plot was like genuinely a little confusing.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
One of my favorite moments in the entire movie, it just goes back to Frank Langella. Like, he's doing his Frank Langella thing and it's working, but it doesn't actually make sense in the context of the story because the whole idea is he's from Transylvania, but there's a moment where he has to hypnotize Mina because she's not feeling good, and all the doctors are saying, don't do that. And he says, no, in my country this works. But he's American?
Yeah,
so,
he's American.
Like,
He's not doing
basically,
any accent.
in my country, the United States of America, we hypnotize our women.
New York City, where I am from as an Italian American.
It's just a mess.
Yeah, it's
and
awful.
His death scene at the end is stupid. This whole movie plays like the Dracula action spectacular. Like, you could turn this into I'm not saying a play. When I say theater, I don't mean a play. You could turn it into theater of an action spectacular.
Yeah, it's like a theme park stage show.
Yes.
You could do it at like Halloween Horror Nights or something.
Like the way they kill Dracula is he's in the hold of the ship. They have to race to get to the ship at the end, and he's in the hold, and they're fighting him down there, and he kills Van Helsing. He like skewers Laurence Olivier.
Oh, yeah.
They like hook him. They hook Dracula, and then they hoist him out of the hold, and they hoist him up to the mizzen mast, and then the sun or something, and then the sun like burns him. He gets like a really bad sunburn.
It's really bad sunburn.
And then he turns into a bat, and like it's just his cape, and then floats away, and then the credits start rolling, and about halfway through the credits, the cape just poofs into dust. Yeah. Vampire Lucy, who is Mina in this, and creepy Frank Langella eyes put it at number 6 on our list.
Let us continue on.
Number 5. Now we get to the Hammer movies.
Yay.
This was super fun because this is like multiple Hammer movies we've watched that have been so much fun to watch, and we didn't expect it. I say this every time. I want to watch all the Hammer movies now
Yeah.
because we watched The Hound of the Baskervilles, and that was so much fucking fun. And we watched their version of Frankenstein, and it was so much fucking fun. Does it any shock to you that The Horror of Dracula from 1958, produced by Hammer, starring Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, was so much fucking fun?
It is not a shock to me at all.
Not at all.
Yeah.
So much fun.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about this one?
I mean, this is definitely the one because as I say, we watched these chronologically. And by the time we get to 1958, this is definitely the one that really introduced this whole body horror element of like
Yes.
just like stuff that is gross happening to your body.
And as a little spoiler, the body horror thing is kind of creepy for both of us. So things with body horror
Yeah.
end up higher on the
higher
list.
on the list. Yeah, especially given my recent and current, depending on when you're listening to this situation.
We're hoping that now at Halloween that we have a little baby. But
Yeah.
when we're recording this,
We don't.
The baby is still inside
The
you.
baby's doing some body horror things to me as we speak.
Yeah.
So that definitely was a plus for me in terms of like the horror and grossness. And it is actually funny because this movie marks, again, as I say, chronologically, the introduction of a couple of different concepts that I wrote down and then got like progressively more intense as we watched movie after movie. That like at the very beginning, someone was like, "Oh yes, please." It was Jonathan Harker said to Dracula, like, "Oh, that's a picture of my fiance, Lucy Holmwood." And I was like, "Wait, what? There's no character named Lucy Holmwood. What? Wait, and Lucy's not his fiance." Like, I got so confused, and then I realized that this is now like a grand tradition of like just moving all of the names. Like, this was actually relatively faithful in terms of like the names and the places and stuff. I just wasn't expecting it.
Yeah, you'd recognize all the names if you liked the book and had seen the Bela Lugosi one.
Yeah.
Like,
other than the fact that Jonathan Harker was an undercover librarian vampire hunter.
that was my favorite part.
Yeah.
Like, so this was the thing that made the movie so exciting right from the beginning because Jonathan arrives at Castle Dracula. He says, "I am a lawyer. I'm here to help you buy some stuff." Christopher Lee shows up as a very imposing Dracula, and you just assume it's like, okay, it's like the book. This is like the book. And then Jonathan starts writing in a letter to Mina, right? Is this one where Arthur, he starts writing a letter to his love,
Yes.
who is either Mina or Lucy?
It's Lucy in this one, but yeah.
Okay, yes, thank you. I couldn't remember.
Lucy Holmwood.
And in it, he says, "I have found Dracula and I am going to kill him." And she's like, "Oh, holy shit.
Yeah.
Wait, he's a vampire hunter. This is different."
Yeah.
And suddenly it's like thrilling and interesting. And it's not faithful to the book, but like it's not pretending to be. It's pretending to be something pulpy and something exciting and something thrilling, which is what the book is. It doesn't succeed because of the particular way that the plot goes. It succeeds based on the atmosphere that it's doing, which I think is going to be true from this one on.
Yeah.
Like the thing that makes them more successful and makes them scarier is they embrace not just the literal text, they're embracing the feeling that the book is trying to evoke in the reader.
Yes. And it did have some very sexy vampire ladies with very 1960s hairdos as well.
Yeah.
Which is also a Hammer horror, I think, trademark.
It's a tradition.
It's a tradition. Well, this was the first one where I started singing "Sexy Lady" as soon as anybody who was a sexy lady came on screen. And you were like, what is that song? What did you just make that up? I'm like, no, it's a song. And I think we realized
I got about 4 Draculas in before I realized you were conflating like 3 Tom Jones songs.
that's right.
So it is She's a Lady
She's a lady.
and other things. Yes, but there are quite a few. There's some sexy hot vampire ladies in this.
Yeah, I mean,
Some creepy ones.
it would not be Hammer horror without the sexy ladies.
Like, and just like Hammer horror, like this doesn't end well for most people.
No.
Like it's not like everybody survives this thing.
No.
Like Jonathan doesn't survive.
Oh, he does not
He
survive.
bites it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Like our main character in this is Van Helsing.
Yeah.
Is Peter Cushing as Van Helsing. And he's not, like, I wouldn't call him a great Van Helsing because he's not the Van Helsing that's from the book.
Yeah, he's kind of doing Sherlock Holmes as Van Helsing.
But he's completely compelling.
Yeah.
Because I even said when we were watching it that it like was more like his Sherlock Holmes, but still I think there's a clear difference between his Sherlock Holmes and his Van Helsing.
Yeah, no, definitely. And as I say, like, we are on record as fans of Peter Cushing. We really enjoyed his performance in this.
Yeah. And Christopher Lee's great.
Yeah.
Like he genuinely, I think, understands that this character is a monster.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important. Like this is not a sexy guy. Basically, I don't think Dracula deserves our consideration.
Yeah.
I don't think his emotional state deserves our consideration. Like, I don't think this is true for any of the ones we do after this, but there are some where I see them going like, oh, he's this tragic figure and he is sexy. Like, no, he's not any of those things. He's a monster.
Yeah.
And even if he is pitiful, it's not in a sexy way.
Yeah.
And his is a monster. Like, there's the scene in the book where Jonathan is being kind of accosted by a vampire woman, and then Dracula by 3 vampire women, and then
3
Dracula comes in and
vampire
says, "What are
sexy
you doing?
ladies."
He's mine. By the way, here's a baby that I brought for you to eat."
Yeah.
And the
Yes.
scene,
That
it
does happen.
happens in this just with the one bride of Dracula, but when he comes in the book, it's described as like an animal. He tears them off him.
Mm-hmm.
In this one, Christopher Lee did that better than any other actor did, I would say.
Yeah.
He's incredibly animalistic, and he's very scary in this.
Yeah.
Like, he really is a creepy figure.
Yeah.
He's real good.
He's good.
All the Hammer movies are great. Let's just keep watching Hammer movies.
Cool.
So that brings us to 1973. And then it brings us to 1974 because this TV movie entitled Dracula was originally supposed to air in 1973, didn't because it was preempted by Richard Nixon announcing Spiro Agnew's resignation. And then in 1974, we got this version of Dracula.
I mean, just is there any better encapsulation of the early 70s than that?
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
This one, I didn't know what to expect with this one.
Yeah.
I expected it to be interesting.
Well, because the director is the guy that made Dark Shadows.
Yeah, and the writer is Richard. I mean, so Dan Curtis directed it and produced it, who, as you say, did Dark Shadows. He also did. You found out he did like a whole series of these on TV.
Yeah, and like all adaptations that like we should do at one point. He did like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yeah.
He did The Portrait of Dorian Gray and The Turn of the Screw, all as like this sort of series of creepy adaptations, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool.
I think so.
Yeah.
We'll say whether he did a good job or not in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
It was also written by Richard Matheson, who wrote I Am Legend. He wrote the Twilight Zone episode Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, which is maybe the scariest thing I've ever seen.
That's the William Shatner episode, right?
Yes.
Yes.
He also wrote the story that Duel was based on, which is, you know, Duel, right?
I don't.
Steven Spielberg, Man vs. Truck.
Nope.
Super fucking creepy and really suspenseful and thrilling. It was a TV movie from the 70s. It was Spielberg's like first movie.
Oh, gotcha.
So good. So I knew going into it would be interesting. We also had like a really interesting casting as Dracula because this is the one with Jack Palance, who he didn't do roles like this. Like, this is like he was in Westerns.
Yeah.
Westerns and crime movies.
Well, I was trying to figure out what I knew him from, and of course it was from his role as Curly in City Slickers.
Yes.
Yes, which I
Yes.
think is his most famous role.
And also Curly's twin brother from City Slickers 2.
Yeah.
What's his name?
I don't know.
Doesn't matter. It's still Curly.
Still Curly.
It's got a good cast. So I was looking forward to it being interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I have this to say.
Yes.
I fucking loved this one. I think this might be my favorite of all the ones we watched.
Yeah, I mean, based on the way that I have heard you talking about them, it is definitely your favorite.
This was more just out and out entertaining, more entertaining than any of the other ones.
Yes.
And still had some genuinely creepy stuff in it.
Oh, yeah.
Because the thing that I think is great about Dan Curtis is this isn't someone who like, it's not like Hammer. It's not like we don't have a code we need to adhere to. We can do whatever we want, so we're going to do some gross shit.
Yeah, let's make it bloody and sexy.
Yeah. Dan Curtis is someone who came from TV, but also was really interested in horror. So he knew how to work within the confines of television. So, for example, this movie is not gory. Like, it doesn't do body horror. It doesn't do gore. There's not a lot of blood in it. But here's something you can do on TV. You can have people be creepy and be in places they shouldn't be, looking fucking creepy.
Yeah.
Lucy in this movie she terrified me.
Yeah.
Like, genuinely, every time, like, after she starts becoming under the thrall of Dracula and he starts sucking her blood, they keep finding her in different places having had her blood sucked. She's not just in bed, and she's creepier and creepier every time. And then after she dies, there's this great moment where Arthur is walking through the house and he looks at a window that's so small in frame, and you just see this face in the window. And it's just great editing and great staging. and it's just her like going, help me.
Yeah.
It's really, really fucking creepy,
It's really
especially
creepy.
considering that was a TV movie.
Mhm.
I found it so effective and so entertaining. It just tries to be fun from the very beginning.
Yeah, I think this is also one of the only, if not the only, versions where we get Harker the vampire.
Yeah.
he does not return from Castle Dracula
No.
at the beginning, but then they go at the end to find him / Dracula, and someone just screams Jonathan, and here he comes running with like big vampire teeth, and they have to stake him. That was very surprising.
Yeah.
It was unexpected because it wasn't like you knew he had been turned, like you
Mhm.
just didn't know what happened to him. So that was like a good like kind of jump scare at the end.
Yeah, which we're spoiling, but
Yeah,
whatever.
whatever.
It's totally fine. Jonathan, this is one of my favorite versions of the Jonathan story.
Mhm.
Like this one just surprised me from minute one because we open with his journey through Transylvania
Mhm.
and he's going into like an inn trying to talk to the innkeepers and finding out that there's a language barrier.
Mhm.
This one was funnier than any of the other ones and also still really creepy. It's just so entertaining.
Yeah.
Can we talk about Jack Palance
Yeah,
as
please.
Dracula?
Yeah.
Couple things about this version of Dracula. This is a Dracula that was written, again, by Richard Matheson, who's a really interesting writer and a really thoughtful writer. This was written after the general scholarly view of Dracula was that he was based on Vlad the Impaler.
Mhm.
This, I think, was the first one we watched where they just outright say, no, Dracula was Vlad the Impaler.
Yeah.
That's who he was.
And he had a lady love who looked just like this modern woman in London.
Like, if you've seen Bram Stoker's Dracula, if you've seen the Coppola one, it's lifted directly from this version.
Yeah, there's flashbacks. It's
Yeah.
really it's interesting.
Directly lifted. What did you think of Jack Palance?
I mean, he gave a very scary performance, and the thing that I think I appreciated about it was, I mean, I don't know if this is what they were going for, if they thought he was sexy, but I did not find him sexy.
No, I don't think they did either.
Yeah, like he was really creepy. And the other thing about like the script and his performance is like he's in the house way more than like most other versions. He's just like constantly trying to get into that fucking house. So there's this scene where I think Lucy's already dead and Mina and Lucy's mother, this is also a rare version that had Lucy's mother in it, are like cowering in the bedroom, and he's like trying to get into the bedroom, and it's really scary. And like they just like there's nothing they can do, and they're trapped in there. And I made a joke that he's gonna burst through the door and yell, "Here's Johnny," but because that's what it reminded me of. But it is like, again, like in terms of things that I personally find scary, being locked in a room with someone who has malicious intent trying to get in is very, very scary.
Like this I loved because it understood that Dracula is a monster.
Yes.
And he's not sexy, he's not attractive. He is someone who thinks he deserves things. This was when I started thinking about like the Me Too kind of lens for all this stuff, because he looks at this woman and says, "You look exactly like someone that I used to love who is dead. I deserve you, and I'm going to take you. And you're going to get nothing out of this. I have nothing to offer. I'm gross, and I'm old, and I'm scary, and I'm violent. But you know what? Fuck you. I deserve you."
Yes.
And that's the thing to me that makes the story compelling. That's what makes Dracula a monster. I don't want to like him.
Yeah.
I want to find him compelling. I want to find him entertaining, but I don't want to like him.
Yeah, he's repulsive.
Yeah, and I loved this one. I thought it was great.
Cool.
So let's move on to, I never would have guessed that this one would be so high up on our list.
Uh-huh.
Based on the reviews I've seen of it on the internet, also
Okay.
based on the fact that I think most people don't know that it exists. But we just watched it last night because it is the most recent of all of the Draculas.
Oh my goodness, yes.
So this was from 2006. This is simply titled Dracula, made by the BBC. It is a TV movie directed by Bill Eagles, written by Stuart Harcourt. It's got a great cast. There's some real cool fucking people in it. We've got Mark Warren as Dracula, who I didn't know. We have David Suchet as Van Helsing.
In a very small role as Van Helsing.
He's not in a lot of it.
Let it be said.
We have Dan Stevens.
Of Downton Abbey.
I would say Dan Stevens as an actor probably has the greatest disparity between how like handsome and compelling he is on screen and how super basic and normal his name is.
Yeah.
Like I've never remembered that his name is Dan Stevens, because anytime I look at him I can't think, well, your name isn't Dan Stevens. That can't possibly be right.
Yeah.
We have a number of good people in this. We just watched it. I don't even know how to start talking about this version.
I mean, here is what I think was the seed of the idea that turned into this film,
Okay.
this script.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm right, but this is what came across to me, that someone had this question. Okay, we all know about the legend of Dracula, this thing about like people's bodies wasting away and having weird diseases and like something mysterious that no one was willing to talk about. What would that have been really? And what they landed on was syphilis.
Yes.
Yes. And while we're on the subject,
We're not on the subject. You just put us on the subject.
while we're on the subject,
I'd love to have someone walk into a room and go, you know what? I love pizza. While we're on the subject of pizza, let's talk about other round bread.
I mean, I haven't really found a great time to bring up this other hypothesis that I have, so I'm just going
Yes.
to talk about it now as well.
Okay.
Again, one of the things that came up again and again as a theme, both in the book Dracula and also in all of these versions directed by male directors and written overwhelmingly by male writers, was this sort of fascination of like, well, women's bodies, who knows why they do what they do. Because there is this overarching image of blood. Everything is blood. It's about blood, and they say the blood is the life, and it's all about, there's all in the book, like Lucy gets 4 different blood transfusions from different people, and they keep talking about how she has 4 strong men's blood in her veins and she still doesn't seem like she has any blood. And this idea of a young woman who is losing blood, but she doesn't seem to be injured, and nobody knows where the blood is coming from. And in this version, in particular, they specifically said she's lost so much blood, but where is it? It would have soaked through the sheets. Like, where is all of this blood coming from? To me, that is a direct reference to menstruation. Which is like a
Typical woman wanting to make everything about menstruation.
menstruation, which again, like
I'm stopping you right here. We are talking about men telling stories about men that happen to involve women. This has nothing to do with menstruation.
I disagree. It's clearly a theme of menstruation. But just this mysterious process of losing blood that women go through that causes them to be like anemic and pale. But men are like, I don't know. I don't see any blood. She doesn't have any cuts on her face. So
But where did the blood go?
where did the blood come from? Where did the blood go? I don't know. I just find purely fascinating.
That, by the way, is
very
the voice that
interesting.
most of the Quincy P. Morrises in all of the versions we watch were doing.
So yes, thank you. Welcome to my TED Talk.
So why is that relevant to this version?
Well, in this version, we have a young lady who definitely,
It's
don't
hard
wanna
to talk
say-
about without spoiling the plot. Like, the
Yeah.
plot of this one goes off the rails.
the plot of this one is fucking banana pants.
Can I give like a quick synopsis of the plot?
Yeah, like as quick as you can.
Okay, so in this one, it's not like the other ones. The bones of it are the same. Like, Dracula lives in Transylvania and he has come to London. The reason he has come is totally different than in the other ones, because in this version, Arthur Holmwood is going to marry Lucy Westenra. That is a thing. But he is very scared because both of his parents his dad died gruesomely from syphilis. His mother died by suicide, which his doctor believes was because she knew she had syphilis and was going to die horribly from it. And he is now starting to suffer effects of syphilis.
He's got congenital syphilis.
Yes.
Yes.
And he doesn't want to consummate his marriage with Lucy because he is deathly afraid of this, but he loves her and he wants to spend the rest of his life with her and he wants to live forever. So he has found the secret society that worships.
Just throw that in at the end. He does want to live forever.
He wants to live forever.
He doesn't just want to be cured of the syphilis.
Yeah, he has found a secret society that promises that he can do this, and that is because they worship someone who can do this for him, and they're like the Society of Dracula.
It's the Society of the Undead. Thank you very much.
That's what they call themselves. So Dracula comes to London because Arthur wants him to come, and it goes very badly for him.
Yes. And also, Jonathan goes to get Dracula and he does not return. He is dead.
I want to take this moment to throw out, I threw out before, like in the very first one we talked about it, that it contained my very favorite Van Helsing.
Okay.
By far in this one my favorite versions of Jonathan and Mina.
Oh, I really liked Mina in this one.
I loved Lucy in this one too.
Yeah, Lucy was great.
This is a crazy thing.
Yeah.
Okay, we have to talk about this.
Because I just want to be clear, like, we're using the names of these characters and talking about this as if it were a Dracula adaptation. There is almost nothing in this that bears any resemblance to the book Dracula by Bram Stoker.
And yet there is so much in it.
Yes.
But here's the thing I want to say about this. This movie is deeply flawed.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to pretend that it doesn't have a lot of problems. It's got some pacing problems. It's cheaply made.
I truly do not understand the plot of why Van Helsing was living in the basement.
Yeah, they like kidnap. So the Society of the Undead has kidnapped Van Helsing, and they find him trapped in the basement where he's been drawing really creepy, like images on the walls of people with big eyes.
Yeah, the big eyes really creep Jeremy out. That is part of the reason this is so high on the list.
It's terrifying. It terrified
Jeremy
me.
doesn't like anything that looks like a gray, like a space alien.
I hate it. Like
so-
little creepy people with big eyes that move quickly, like are just. I hate them. I hate them. This creeped me out. It deeply creeped me out. And there's a lot of body horror in this one. And Dracula's disgusting, and it doesn't shy away from having a lot of blood. Like it's just a gross movie. I wrote down like I don't know if this is scary, but it sure is upsetting.
Yeah,
there's a
it's
lot in
very
this movie that's very
upsetting.
upsetting. So it has all these problems, but weirdly, here are some things that it did better than any other version. You'd like to start. I can see you've raised your hand. I would love for you to start.
This movie created genuine sexual tension between two characters in by far the best way of any other version. Genuine, like, sexual attraction and chemistry and tension.
You mean between like Lucy and Dracula?
I do not.
You mean between like Mina and Jonathan?
I do not.
Who could it possibly be?
Mina and Lucy were hot for each other in this movie.
Genuinely thought they were going to kiss.
And not in like an exploitative way. I didn't think.
No, they're like, there's this beautiful scene where these two women are connecting on an emotional level, and they're learning more about each other.
And they're talking about sex.
They're talking about sex, and they're talking about the things that are important to them. And I genuinely thought they were going to kiss because they were making an emotional connection with
I really
each
thought
other.
they were going to kiss. I truly thought they were going to kiss. And then like the window blew open and scared them. And then
Yes.
the moment was over. But holy shit. I mean, let me put it this way. We did not watch one other version that had one single moment that was supposed to be sexy that I went, "Ooh, this is This one had a couple."
Yeah. This it understood how to handle sex in a better way. Like that was appropriate for a horror movie, I
Yeah.
thought. God, there's so much. Here's the thing the reason I'm bringing it up right now. In terms of the way the characters are all drawn, I think one of the things that all of the other ones suffer from is something I called out at the beginning is like people are only going through the motions because that's what the plot demands.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were to look at Quincy and Arthur and Jonathan and Dr. Seward and Mina and Lucy, like there's not really much to distinguish their characters other than their name and like who they happen to be in love with.
Right.
They're just a bunch of characters going through the story together, which is why it's so easy to combine them and eliminate them in all of these adaptations.
Yeah.
I don't think Stoker did an amazing job of drawing characters.
Mm-hmm.
In this one, every single one of our characters is unique. They have an inner life. It's clear what they want. They exist on a range from really innocent to really malevolent.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just like 5 of them are innocent and 1 of them is malevolent. Like, no, they're all capable of these things and they sit on a spectrum. I genuinely cared about them in ways that I didn't. Like, this was the only one where Mina has become a target of Dracula, and I genuinely did not want Mina to die.
Yeah.
This is the thing that came up when we did Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
Like, our favorite one was the Zeffirelli because it was the only one where we looked at him and said, we don't want these kids to die.
Right.
We actually care. I really cared about Mina. Mina and Jonathan. So Rafe Spall plays Jonathan, and Stephanie Leonidas plays Mina.
Mm-hmm.
They have amazing chemistry. I thought they were incredible in this.
Yeah, Jonathan's not in it for that long.
No, and it broke my heart because Rafe Spall was my favorite Jonathan
Yeah.
of any version.
He's quite adorable.
They were so good in this movie, even though the movie itself wasn't amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I think all the actors in this movie were doing amazing work.
Yes. I don't disagree. I mean, I feel like if 1931's Dracula starring Bela Lugosi was the one that we were like, don't be fooled by how low this is. We're not talking about its quality as a movie. We're talking about it on the Scariness Index.
Yes.
This is kind of the one where we're like, don't be fooled by how high this is.
Yes. Don't.
Because this movie, I don't want anyone to get me wrong. This movie is very bad.
Yes.
It is quite terrible. The script is awful.
It's not. No, I disagree. It's not awful. It is not good.
It's not good.
Yeah.
It's not good. It is certainly not the third best movie that we watched as a movie. But in terms of what we were trying to get out of a production of Dracula, it really pushed a lot of buttons for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, we liked it.
It felt like one of the most modern versions of a Hammer movie I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was very modern.
It just it changes the plot in a lot of ways. There's intrigue, there's interest, there's like crime stuff that's built into it. It's like a murder mystery that's built into it. You actually have a Dracula movie where Dracula's not the antagonist. Arthur Holmwood, Dan Stevens, is the antagonist.
Yeah.
Dracula is the force of nature that he has employed that he can't control anymore.
Right.
But they're not trying to make Dracula be anything other than a disgusting monster.
Yeah, he's gross.
Really gross and really just creepy
Oh, God.
and unsettling.
There is a scene between him and Lucy that is disgusting.
Yeah, and this also, one thing I was happy about is that we really enjoyed this one so much, and it echoed something from a movie we watched at our Halloween episode last year that we hated, which is that one character takes another character's head and pulls it clean off their bodies.
What the hell is that?
That happens in this one. Who pulls off the head? I'm not going to say. Who gets their head pulled off? I'm not going to say.
Don't spoil it.
Sure does happen, though.
Yeah.
It was just fascinating.
Yeah.
It was fascinating how much fun it was.
Yeah, very bizarre. It's on Amazon Prime, so
Yeah.
definitely watch it. If you have Prime, it won't cost you anything.
I
And
genuinely recommend watching it.
yeah, it's only 90 minutes, so it's at a good pace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really fun. Really, really fun. So I think we need to go from our most recent Dracula movie. We are now moving to number 2 on our scary vampire, our scary Dracula list.
Dun dun dun.
Number 2 is, in point of fact, the oldest Dracula movie. And that was 1922's Nosferatu, directed by F.W. Murnau and written by Henrik Galeen.
Yes.
Starring, famously, Max Schreck as Count Orlok. Wait, what? And starring Gustav von Wangenheim as Thomas Mutter. Wait,
Who?
wait, who? Starring Greta Schroeder as Ellen Hutter. What? And starring Alexander Granich as Knock.
Yeah, so
Some things we need to talk about.
what we're trying to say is this movie was made so long ago that Dracula was still in copyright.
Yes. This movie has such a fascinating backstory. So I have to make the assumption that a lot of people have never seen this movie. Most people have never seen Nosferatu.
Yeah.
It's just one of those, and people don't watch silent movies. And I don't, before people think that I'm one of those people that's like, oh, you don't really appreciate cinema unless you watch silent movies. I'm not one of those people. Silent movies are like any movie. Sometimes they're really, really good, and sometimes they're bad. Just because they're silent movies doesn't mean they deserve more respect, or they are just naturally more entertaining than other ones. Okay?
Yes.
Do you feel like I've made that clear?
You have made that clear.
Okay.
You've mentioned this before whenever we've watched a silent movie.
Yes. Nosferatu it's got a lot of things going against it in terms of the scariness factor. One, it is a silent movie. It is a cheap silent movie. It's made in 1922. I think it would be very hard for a modern audience to watch it and get really invested in it. But it does have one thing going for it.
Yeah.
It has Max Schreck as Count Orlok, or Dracula in
Yes.
this one. Before I talk about what it was about Max Schreck that made him so good and made him so scary, I want to talk a little bit about the making of this movie. Is that cool with you?
Yeah, please.
So as you say, this movie was made while Dracula was still in copyright. They stole the plot. Let's be clear. They stole it. And Bram Stoker's widow said, oh, no, you won't do that. I'm going to sue you. And she did. And the judge ruled in her favor. And one of the kind of results of this was that they ordered that every single copy of Nosferatu be destroyed. We are all very lucky that they did not succeed.
Yeah.
Because by this point, it was already incredibly popular. I think a lot of people think it was really popular because of the lawsuit. people go see things sometimes because there's another story that's happening about
Right. That's
them.
literally called. This is an early example of the Streisand effect.
Yes, a little bit. Yeah.
Like, don't look. Don't look at this movie. Do not look at it.
And all
I would like to look at it. I think.
I would like to watch this
No,
movie
no,
very
don't.
much.
No, you do not. It is bad. No,
But it looks
I really,
quite good.
I think I kind of want
It looks quite
it.
good. I would like to see it. I very much want to see it.
Yes.
Thank you very much. This movie's fucking amazing. It comes from the whole like area of, if people don't know a lot about German Expressionism, I would really look it up. This is a great example of it. Another one is the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. I really think the Germans, even though they didn't really have a great idea about how to treat people,
Track record.
you know, like at that time they weren't doing so well. Not Germany today, Germany in the 20s.
Yeah.
They were still figuring this out and would get worse as time went on. Their directors were making incredible movies because when you make silent movies, you really can go in one of two directions. You can either just film theater, which is what was happening in the United States and Britain at the time, which is like you just take people, you put them on a stage, you shoot them, and then you cut that together and that's your movie. So that's not saying there aren't things that are cinematic happening in them, but that they weren't deeply cinematic. But then you have the Germans who were saying, no, we're going to embrace everything about this art form, and we're going to embrace set design and cinematography and lighting. Things can be dark, things can be light, and this can make people feel things. The expressionist, German expressionism is beautiful, and I'm always fascinated by it, and I love seeing it show up. I talked about Tim Burton before. Like, Tim Burton was a guy that liked this kind of stuff. This movie's terrifying.
Yeah, it's really scary.
Because of Max Schreck.
Yeah.
I want to hear your thoughts on this.
I
I've talked
mean-
for a while now. I'm very sorry.
No, that's totally fine. I know nothing about German expressionism, so
I'm gonna
it's
get
a
off
good
my
thing.
stupid film student like bullshit soapbox for a second.
Completely fine. So basically, the way that we ranked things on this creepiness index or our scariness index was just everything we watched. We started at the bottom of the list we already had and said, was this scarier than this thing? Was this scarier than this thing? Was this scarier than this thing? And wherever it fell, that's where it landed. And that's how we made the order for this list. Nothing got past how scary this character is
For a long time.
for a long time, just with his bald. I mean, if you don't know what we're talking about, you've probably seen it. Actually, just this bald head, long teeth, long fingernails, and just this
Big, creepy ears, incredibly pale, giant, terrifying eyes.
Yeah, and then there's all of these shots of him just in shadow, but there's this one shot in the movie where you're inside a house and it's filming out and he's in the house across the street just standing in the window. Just this tiny, tiny, creepy figure standing in the window. And for the longest time, nothing that we watched could surpass the creepiness of how scary that shot is of this horrifying creature just watching you through the window. It was awful.
I loved it so much. A couple things about watching this movie. If you haven't seen it, I would recommend seeing it.
It's like an hour. It's not long.
It's like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Like it's a feature. It's a full length movie.
Fair enough.
You can find it for free in a number of different places, but I genuinely recommend like paying for it and renting it, because the version so the version we found on Amazon Prime was like a really bad like scan of it, and all of the like inner titles refer to the characters by the book names.
Yeah.
So they're like renamed Harker and Dracula and everything.
And there weren't nearly as many of them. So I think the plot would have been more confusing because it was like fully 10 minutes shorter than the one we ended up watching. And there wasn't any extra film. It was just the titles and the plot. Because obviously they don't speak, so you have to have these interstitial like words on the screen.
Yeah, but like the version you can watch that was remastered a few years ago that you can get if you rent, like looks much better. You can really see what's going on in all of it because all the prints were super damaged.
Yeah.
They did a really interesting thing when they were actually producing it, which at the time they would like tint the frame just one color because it wasn't in color.
That was very
so
odd too.
They would do things where like if a character was sitting in a room and there was a candle, the screen is yellow, and then when they blow out the candle, the whole thing turns blue because now the light is out. And it's just a thing they did at the time that I think enhances the movie. Also, the score is wildly different depending on which version you watch because it's not like necessarily cobbled together. This one is like based on the original score. So I think it is the best way to watch it. So I do recommend that. But the thing that I think is so terrifying about Orlok And the thing that makes it work, even though this movie is nigh on 100 years old,
Like literally 100 years old.
the thing that's scary about Orlok would be scary even if there was sound, even if it was in color, because Orlok himself is white, dressed in black, and he doesn't make noise.
Yeah.
These are the
He
things
doesn't
that are
speak at all.
like, these are the things that are scary about him.
Yeah.
It would work no matter what. I fucking loved how scary he was in this movie. I want to acknowledge something that I read. I don't want to bum you out. And I don't know how much stock I put in this.
Are you going to bum me out or the listeners?
No, you.
Oh, good.
Specifically. I don't know, probably some of our listeners too. There seems to be a large number of people who think that Count Orlok is a comment on Jewish people.
Great.
Because he's like, you know, the big nose and everything
Yeah, no,
like
I get
that.
it.
Best as I could find, the writer of the movie was Jewish.
Uh-huh.
So, like, I don't know how much stock I put in that.
Mm-hmm.
Like we acknowledged before, Germany in the 20s,
Not great.
not great. Certainly not as bad as they were going to get. I am not 100% sold on that.
Gotcha.
And I think this is one of those things where, like, it's really hard to prove a negative.
Yeah.
And so it's like impossible to prove that it isn't anti-Semitic. But I think it's really hard to prove that it is.
Yeah.
Other than it was Germany in the 20s and this character has a big nose, which I don't know about that. I wanted to acknowledge it just in case anyone was going to come back at us and say, yeah, but did you look at it from this perspective?
I mean, anti-Semitism is a state of mind.
Yeah. I wanted to acknowledge that really quickly.
Yes.
This movie is so entertaining, though. Like, it really works. It moves along at a really good clip. It's paced well. Yes, it still is silent. There's so much about it that I think I don't want to talk about because the thing that makes it so good aren't the lines.
Yeah, it's just a scary, scary creature.
It's the experience of watching it. He's so terrifying and so deeply creepy.
I mean, here's the deal. Like, if you want proof that this character and this design of this character is deeply, deeply scary and creepy, no matter whether you're talking about a black and white movie without sound or a modern movie, you know, with sound, I think we should just move on to number one.
I agree with you.
Because
So we're moving from Nosferatu, 1922, to Nosferatu the Vampire,
the vampire.
1979, directed and written by Werner Herzog, which was an incredibly close remake of Nosferatu.
Yes.
That is number one on our list.
Yes, we have come to the final scary Dracula.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
So many things about this movie are so good and so unsettling and occasionally incredibly scary. Where should we start? Do you want to start with the cast?
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm going to work backwards a little bit. One thing that was really nice about this one is that they did make it after Dracula had gone into the public domain.
Yeah.
So all of the characters were renamed.
Yes.
A couple of things that's just important to say. This movie was a German production.
Yes.
They shot all of the dialogue scenes twice in English and in German. Herzog has gone on record to say that the German version is the most authentic version.
So that's the one we watched.
Yes.
To be clear.
So we read this movie for 2 hours.
Yes.
We do have a Van Helsing. He's not the Van Helsing we know. He, in fact, is probably the least believing in the occult of any characters. He is present.
Yeah.
Would you say that? Like,
Yeah.
he's there.
He's not the main character.
No. We do have Renfield. So he was Knock in the old one.
Right.
And he's Renfield in the new one.
Yeah.
Creepiest laugh you've ever
Oh
heard?
my gosh. Yeah, we were truly disturbed.
Like, Renfield goes through a lot in this movie.
He really does.
Dracula does a real number on this guy.
Right, for sure. He takes him from, like, when the movie begins, he's not the most stable of people, and takes him all the way to fly spider eating, like, cat killing, creepy laughing lunatic.
Yep. We have the Harkers, Jonathan and Lucy.
Yes.
Played by Bruno Ganz and Isabella Gianni. What'd you think? Let's start with Jonathan.
Okay.
What did you think of this portrayal of the character and Bruno Ganz as an actor?
Well, here's the deal. Bruno Ganz made a very strong impression upon me several years ago with his portrayal of one particular character.
It bums me out that, like, this is who you think of him. You think of when you think of him.
And so I can't it is very hard for me to, because he gave such an incredible performance, but it is very hard for me not to think of him as Hitler.
I'm sure everyone has some experience with the clip from the movie Downfall of Hitler getting news that his war's not going too well.
Yeah.
That's Bruno Ganz.
That movie is amazing. If you've only seen that clip, you should watch the whole movie. Like, that is one of my favorite historical dramas that I've ever seen. It's so good. His performance is amazing. Like, and sometimes, like, I find that if someone is acting in a language that you don't speak and you're relying on the subtitles, it is hard to tell what the quality of the performance is. In this case, it is very clear. It's really amazing.
Yeah.
But anyway, like, so we have Hitler playing Jonathan Harker. Yep. Young Hitler.
I think he's so good in this.
Yeah, he's really good.
This movie's very quiet and it's very thoughtful. It was interesting because it was 1979, so it was the same year as the Frank Langella one, which again we described as Dracula the Action Spectacular.
Yeah.
They could not be more different.
Yeah, this one's very cerebral.
Like, if that's what you're here for, you should watch this one.
Yeah.
If you would prefer an action spectacular, you should not watch it.
Yeah.
I don't think I could recommend it to someone who wants that kind of movie. It is very cerebral. It's very slow. It's very thoughtful. Oftentimes there's quiet in it, which is good because it's based on a silent movie.
Right.
Like, it's not like he fills it up with dialogue.
No, he like really respects that silence. There's a lot of silence.
What they put Jonathan through in this movie is intense.
Yeah.
Like, Jonathan gets run through the ringer in this movie. His time in Castle Dracula is very, very scary and bad. His time spent after Castle Dracula is very scary and very bad. I thought Bruno Ganz was great as Jonathan Harker. And then we have Isabella Gianni as Lucy Harker.
Yes. Really, of all the Lucy/Minas, like, some of the most agency, I would say, of any of them in the terms of the writing. Like, she starts off very like, oh, like very weak, like, oh, Jonathan, like, how will I ever, get along without you, and this and that and all this stuff. And by the end, she's like, I know what's going on. No one will believe me. You won't believe me, and you won't believe me, and you won't do anything to help me. So I'm going to fucking solve this problem myself. Unfortunately, the way that she has to solve the problem is let herself be eaten by Dracula, so he gets distracted, and the sunlight comes in and kills him.
Sunlight starts to kill him, and then he gets staked.
Yeah. But I really like that aspect of this character. She's like, fuck you all, I'm doing this myself, no one will help me.
She's one of my favorite versions of this, like, Lucy Mina character.
Yeah, totally.
I would actually say, I'd even go as far to say she's the main character in this movie.
Oh, I mean, she definitely takes the most action. Everybody else is like, I don't know, it's just a Dracula.
It is weird that we have a Dracula movie where you've got Mina basically going to Van Helsing, and Van Helsing's like, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
No, what are you talking about? I don't believe any of that stuff.
Yeah.
The Harkers are great in this. And then that brings us to Count Dracula himself.
Dracula.
How crazy is it that someone who played Dracula on our list also played Renfield in another version?
Yeah, it is. It's pretty nuts.
But we have Werner Herzog's best friend, who also he hated him. And
Wait, is that true?
Oh, yeah. The stories.
Were they frenemies?
They were frenemies. Like, Werner Herzog literally made a documentary called My Best Fiend about Klaus Kinski.
Gotcha.
Klaus Kinski was a piece of shit. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Like, famously got in. Like, one thing I found about this movie is that it just says, while he fought with everyone else on the movie, the only person he seemed to have a good relationship with was his makeup artist. Because he had to spend 4 hours with them every day. Like, Klaus Kinski was a crazy person. And was deeply, deeply interested in his craft and would do and say crazy things, but would also turn in really interesting performances. Kinski's a madman.
Yeah, well, there it is.
And his Dracula is terrifying.
It's very scary.
He's definitely based on Max Schreck.
Yeah.
But
more so.
More so. Like, the character design is very similar. He doesn't have the thing that Max Schreck has, which is Max Schreck is very tall and very angular. Kinski's like just a smaller guy.
Yeah. But somehow it's creepier because he can sneak up on you a little bit better.
Kinski does stuff with this role physically that no one else did.
Yeah.
With the role. He's like more in command of every part of his body than anyone else is. I feel like there's, people talk about like Bela Lugosi doing like, come to me and putting his hand out and everything.
Children of the night.
Like, Klaus Kinski puts him to shame,
Yeah.
I think.
Well, you had a very speaking of the character design, you had a very interesting observation about his fingernails.
Yeah, okay, so I'm not sure about this. I'd love to know more. I couldn't find anything about it. So we posted on Instagram about this while we were watching all of these. We decided to okay, so we actually had a lot of shit going on while we were watching.
Little peek behind the curtain here.
So one of the weeks that we were watching all of these Draculas, a mouse died in our wall, and so our apartment smelled like
so
death.
bad.
For like a week and a half.
Yeah.
Like as I'm standing here now, we're only about 2 days after the smell going away. What were the other things we were dealing with?
I was at I had an emergency. I had to go to the doctor.
You're dealing with genuine body horror right now.
I was dealing with genuine body horror.
We had flies flying around because of the dead mouse.
It smelled. You had to deal with an exterminator that turned out not to be a stable person.
Yeah.
Like it was a lot.
I get yelled at by a crazy guy on the phone.
It was a lot. But we thought, here's a good way to make the house smell better.
Yeah.
And would be funny because we're watching Dracula. Let's roast a bunch of garlic in the oven.
So I roasted 4 heads of garlic.
Yes.
Here's some things. If anyone's never done this before, I highly recommend it. What you do is you just slice off the tops. You want to save as much garlic as possible, but you want to expose all the cloves. Then you put it in a little pouch made of aluminum foil, and you dribble in some like olive oil on top of it. And you roast it at like 400 for like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
It's going to make your house smell amazing. And then what you do is you let it cool down a little bit, and you pop all the cloves out and just mash it together. You can put this in anything. It's incredible.
We've had it in a bunch of stuff.
It is just so fucking good. Roast garlic's amazing.
Yes.
But that ends this portion of the show.
But you made this very interesting observation as you were taking apart these heads of garlic.
So if anyone has ever like peeled a head of garlic, before you peel it, it still has the skin on it, and the skin comes up to a point at the top and then extends up about an inch, and it's just a very, very thin point. Every single one of his fingernails looked like a head of garlic.
Yeah, a clove of an unpeeled clove of garlic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of them did. And we're watching it as I'm doing this, and I'm like holding it up to the screen going, that's funny.
Yeah, I was watching. You were in the kitchen doing something, and I was watching the movie, and you just came around holding this garlic, and you were like, "What does this remind you of?" And I was like, "Oh my god!" So I don't know. Maybe you're the first person to ever make that observation.
I don't know.
I'm
not sure.
Yeah.
But I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
So the character design's really good. He has a tremendous physicality. The scenes he's in, the Dracula he's playing is not the same as the Dracula Max Schreck was playing. Because I feel like Max Schreck was playing a Dracula that was much more active and much more quick-moving. Mm-hmm. Would you say like kind of rat-like?
Yeah. This one was very like slow, but also like very, very, very creepy because he could creep up on you.
Yeah.
And you would turn around and just there he was.
Like this was a vampire that was being played way more like a drug addict, like someone who has been a victim of drug addiction for decades and is barely alive at this point, and they're currently a slave to it and can't control their own actions, and it's horrifying.
Yeah.
Except the thing that he wants is blood.
Yeah.
Like all of the different versions that we watch have some kind of version where Jonathan or Renfield or whoever is at the castle and they get like a paper cut or whatever. And in all the versions, Dracula looks down at it and goes like, "Oh, holy shit. Oh my God. Oh God. It's blood. It's blood. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do." And then the scene ends.
Yeah.
This is the only one where Dracula looks down at it and like in an instant has grabbed Jonathan's hand and is just sucking the blood.
Yeah.
The sound effects in this movie of Dracula sucking blood
there's so much slurping.
are intense.
Yeah, there's a lot of slurping.
Genuinely intense. Oh man, what he puts Jonathan through in the castle. There's just these scenes where Jonathan is in bed and Dracula is in the doorway walking up to him slowly, and Jonathan can't do anything.
Yeah.
And he is a victim in that point. Like he is going to be victimized by this awful, like pitiable. This is the thing. I know I'm doing the thing where I can't complete a thought, and I'm really sorry about that, but we've been recording for a long time right now.
Long.
The thing that Herzog does with Dracula in this movie that impresses me so much is he really threads the needle on this, where we have a Dracula who is pitiable. Like, I feel for him, and clearly he has been living alone and living with this horrible addiction for centuries.
Yeah.
So I genuinely do feel for him, but he's still a monster.
Yeah, I mean, he is the most incel of all of the Draculas.
Yeah.
He literally has a line where he's like, oh, pity me, for what woman would ever touch this flesh? It's like, yeah, probably none. You're really gross.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is interesting. Like, my observation was like, based on the source text, it seems like you can go two completely opposite directions. You either get sexy Dracula or absolutely monstrous Dracula. There's really very little in between. There's really not, like, the range between Frank Langella as Dracula and this Dracula is insane that it's the same character, right?
And if anything, it tells me that one of these actors is fine being portrayed as a disgusting, awful creature, and the other one is like, no, I'm pretty fucking sexy.
Yeah,
I should be in it because I'm sexy.
Let me be sexy.
Here's what people don't understand about the Dracula story. They don't understand how sexy Dracula is.
Frank's gotta be Frank.
And how much women want him.
Ugh, women do not want this Dracula.
I actually was going to mention this before and then I forgot, and I feel like this is a good moment to kind of wrap things up and talk about how differently this character can be portrayed depending on what the creator brings to it. So this is something that Frank Langella was saying about Dracula.
Oh, good God.
So according to Frank Langella, Count Dracula was, quote, a dominant, aggressive force. He must have Miss Lucy or he dies. He wants what he wants and he doesn't analyze it. Dracula as a character is very erotic. A woman can be totally passive with Dracula. He made me drink. I couldn't help it. Dracula seems to represent a kind of doorway to sexual abandonment not possible with a mere mortal. Besides, he's offering immortality. Actually, I can't think of a woman who wouldn't like to be taken if it's with love. If you take a woman by force and at the same time gently, you can't fail. I wish people could see the look on your face right now. That's not. I can't tell if I've like broken you.
I find that upsetting. Yes, I find what you just read very upsetting, and also I hate Frank Langella.
This certainly didn't help, I'm sure.
No,
but like, can you think of a quote that more perfectly encapsulates the problematic nature that so many filmmakers attack this character?
No, and it's not in the book at all.
No.
They're just like, yeah, wouldn't it be great to just walk around into ladies' bedrooms? I bet that feels sexy.
And that's what ladies want.
That's what ladies want.
That's what they want.
That's what they want.
No, I feel like the thing that's so great looking back on these 10 versions that we watched is like, yeah, the most authentic ones, the most book accurate ones were like the least scary and the least effective.
Yeah.
But the ones that were most scary and most effective were ones that actually captured something that was in the text. Something that was really in the text beyond just character names and plot. Like the Hammer one and the 2006 one were like pulpy and exciting in ways that the book is. And the Dan Curtis one was like entertaining and fun and had really good characters and really good interactions between the characters that was in the book. And then we look at the two Nosferatus and they both address the fact that Dracula is a monster.
Yeah.
Dracula is a scary monster. In the book, he is a scary monster. He's not sexual. Like,
he's sexual. He's not sexy.
Right. I'm so sorry. Yes, I'm so sorry. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
This is a character that takes what he wants, and that's the thing that makes him scary.
Yes.
Because he victimizes the people around him.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, like, it sounds like what Frank Langella is saying is that taking what he wants makes him sexy, but it doesn't. It makes him scary, and that's where I think the Me Too thing comes in as well, right?
Mm-hmm. So that's Dracula.
That's Dracula.
Do you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, let's wrap this up. We watched so many Draculas, you guys.
Which was your favorite? Like, which one do you think you enjoyed the most?
Oh, honestly,
like, I wouldn't ask you to say, like, who's your favorite Dracula, because I think there were a bunch that we liked. Like, I don't want to say that, but, like, which one did you enjoy?
Can I say which one I enjoyed watching the most? I kind of enjoyed the Coppola one just because it was so batshit and something was always happening. But in terms of the one that I, like, thought was the best movie, I mean, I think it had to have been the Werner Herzog version.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think?
Yeah. I think so too. My favorite was the Dan Curtis one.
Yeah, I know you really liked that one.
I just enjoyed the shit out of that movie. It was so much fun. But like, I think the best one was Werner Herzog. Yeah. Like, by far was the best one. Yeah. The Coppola one, I just didn't enjoy. Yeah. Like, it was just a...
But I enjoyed watching it with you because there was a lot to talk about.
Yeah, that's true. It is batshit.
Yeah, it's batshit.
Absolutely batshit.
I wouldn't sit down and watch it. What I'm saying is I enjoyed the experience of watching it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
But I wouldn't call it spooky.
Happy Halloween!
Well, this has been Adapter Parish. If you'd like to find us online, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at AdaptCast. And if you tweet about the show, don't forget to use the AdaptCast hashtag. You can join our groups on Facebook and Goodreads, and you can also find and follow me on Letterboxd. If you have anything to say that's longer than a tweet, you can always send an email to adapterparishcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the show, there are 2 great ways you can do it. First, tell a friend. Second, a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice would be greatly appreciated.
I never drink wine.
Yeah, that's the thing he says.
It has been 9 months since I have had wine.
We're going to get this baby out of you, sweetie.
I just want it out.
I know. We're going to do that.
Bye,
Happy
everybody.
Halloween, everybody.
Happy Halloween.